Okay, I would like to call this meeting to order and announce that this meeting of the Seguin Independent School District has been duly called and the notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.043 of the Texas Government Code. And I do note that all of the trustees are here, and we are starting the meeting at 6:34. All right. We will now stand and have Mr. Ishmael Flores lead us in the pledges to the United States and Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, we'll take a bit of time for a moment of silence. Thank you, and thank everybody for being here this evening. It's a big crowded house. We've got lots of students out in the foyer. We are going to start off with the superintendent announcements. Dr. Gutierrez.
Good evening, board members and Seguin ISD community. There is a high level of excitement in Seguin ISD, and I'd like to share a few examples from around the school district. Our Lady Matador volleyball team finished the season undefeated in District 26 5A with a 16-0 record. This is the first time in 28 years that the volleyball team has brought home a district title. They won their bi-district playoff match last night against Austin LBJ, where they fought very hard. Once we receive the details on their next match, which is most likely later this week, we will share the information via social media. The young ladies have been exciting to watch this season and a great source of pride for this entire community. There was quite a football game at the Jack Taylor Field on Friday night as your Matadors faced Dripping Springs. Both teams entered the game with 4-0 district records, and at the end of 4 quarters, the score was tied at 36. The visitors won the overtime coin toss and ended up kicking a field goal. The Matadors responded with a walk-off touchdown to win the game 42-39. Needless to say, the atmosphere in the Matador Stadium was electric late all Friday night. Best of luck to our playoff-bound team as they travel to Austin this Friday night for their 9th regular season game. Jerry Garcia and Cheney Stevens represented Seguin High School at the Region 4 cross-country meet in Corpus Christi on October the 22nd. Jerry and Cheney hung with the best, finishing 47th and 50th respectively out of 186 runners in the 3-mile race. The mighty Matador Band has been stacking up the awards this marching season, including the Kamal Classic Marching Festival on October the 13th. The band swept all caption awards in the Class 5A contest, winning Outstanding Music, Outstanding Marching, Outstanding Percussion, and Outstanding Guard. The Matadors also earned a first place in Class 5A. The band went to receive Superior 1 ratings in every category at the Region 12 UIL meeting contest held in San Antonio on October the 20th. Congratulations to all of our band students. Our choir program also has students who are excelling in competition. For example, students have been named to all-region mixed choir and have advanced to the top 10 pre-area round of competition for November. More students have been selected for the all-region treble choir and the tenor bass select choir. Additionally, several more were selected to participate in the region choir after the honor treble choir auditions that were held on Saturday. More on the choir in a few minutes. The theater art students spent many hours rehearsing for the Junie B. Jones Jr., and if you saw one of their performances last week, I'm sure that you would also agree. They did a fantastic job and hosted several performances for elementary students in the Performing Arts Center at the high school. Breezy Meister Theater recently sent six groups of students to compete in the Texas Junior Thespian State Festival and Contest. 6 Breezy Meister students received a superior rating and qualified to compete in the International Thespian Festival in Nebraska this summer. I applaud these middle schoolers for their success. November the 6th is Election Day, and early voting runs through Friday. I encourage all eligible voters to cast a ballot in this election. We are fortunate to have community members stepping up to the plate to volunteer their time and talents on several district committees. The Facilities Committee met today and spent several hours prioritizing campus facility needs. Last week, key communicators met on Wednesday, and on Thursday I had the pleasure of hosting for the first time this school year the Superintendent Student Advisory Team, which is comprised of student representatives from each campus. Stakeholder input and engagement is imperative to our success as a school district, and I appreciate our committee members and their commitment to our school district. Thank you so much for your continued support, and it is a great day to be a Matador. Tonight, it is a special privilege to recognize an individual who has continuously given 110% each and every day. His quiet yet friendly approach has made him a favorite when a computer or printer needs to be repaired. Always cheerful and always considerate. His customer service skills are second to none. And for these reasons, I am proud to share this month's recipient of the Superintendent's Award. This individual makes it possible for our teachers, for our staff to be able to cultivate, inspire, and empower our students, to allow them to carry out our mission every day. This month's Superintendent Award deservingly goes to Technology Department Network Assistant Jerry Belmares. And Jerry's wife and kids are here, so if they will please wave, I'd like to recognize y'all.
Congratulations, Jerry. We appreciate all that you do for the district, truly. And family, thanks for giving up your time. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to board member reports. Probably going to hear a lot of repetition here. I've been to football games, I've been to volleyball games, band competitions, theater at all 3 campuses at Breezy, Barnes, and the high school. I attended a key communicators meeting a couple of weeks ago, and then a few of us were lucky enough to visit the dual language classrooms at Rodriguez and at Kinnicky. Mr. Holt?
Yes, Madam President. I participated in the candidate forum at TLU. I've been to the 3 marching contests for the band at Westlake, at Comal, and at the UIL Region 12. I attended the CCESTC reception for Congressman Gonzalez. Attended Buck Fever and the Wade Busby Memorial, the key communicator meeting, Junie B. Jones play, the middle school choir performance where they had over 300 choir members from the middle school. Awesome job right there. I spoke at the LULAC meeting last night before going over to the volleyball playoff game, and also attended at the first of the month attended the TASB convention as a delegate for the board.
Steffenberger?
I don't have anything to report as far as my attending activities, but I would like to thank all of the support I've received over the past 6 years. It's been wonderful to be able to talk to people about the problems that they see in Seguin, to work on those problems, and I feel like my tenure has been very good. It's been a lot more positive than negative, and we've done so much this time in the way of progress, and I'm just really pleased with all of that. I hope you will vote, and I know that the person replacing me on this board will be as pro-education as I have been, and I really appreciate all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Effenberger. I do want to give a shout out to the high school choir. I did come watch y'all at your concert as well. Mr. Almador.
I attended dual language classes at Kennedy and Rodriguez Elementary, and I saw the teachers working hard and teaching kids a lot, and I came away with learning something myself.
Mr. Jenkins.
I too attended Kennedy and Rodriguez and was very impressed with the progress that's being made there, and really touched my heart, the kids over there. So I've been to several football games and volleyball games, and I've been to 2 fundraisers for the Seguin Mariachis, and have enjoyed that, and will be supporting them in the future. They have another fundraiser coming up on the 3rd of November. So if y'all can help support them in any way you can. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Reel?
Well, we all go to events, right? So
Yes.
we won't repeat it. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for the last 2 years. I look forward to the next person sitting in the seat over there. Thank you to the teachers, the staff, the students who work hard every day. And you guys are what it's about. So go Mats.
Thank you, Ms. Reel. And Mr. Flores.
Like to make also attended some of the athletic events, but Mr. Almador failed to mention that we attended a very interesting audit committee financial meeting with Mr. Hilbert, our last one. But I also like to take this opportunity to thank all the administrators and thank all the teachers and educators of Seguin ISD. Won't be too long-winded, but would like to say it's 20 years, not 19. I know it was May of '98 is when I was on the board. But I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that was by my side during my 20-year journey while on the school board. I'd especially like to thank my wife and kids for having to bear some of the headaches that comes along with being a volunteer. Everyone on this board, as you're aware, are volunteers. It's not always easy for us. There are long school board nights, workshops, and sometimes there are decisions that aren't always popular. At times where topics fall into the school halls where the next day our kids will have to bite their tongues many times, or our spouses will have to hear complaints year in and year out, and taking it all in, and taking it in strides. They didn't sign up for this. We did, but they're all troopers. Our spouses and our families are troopers, and it is a thankless job, but we're here for the kids. We're here for the families, and we're here for the employees of this school district. So thank you to our families. Thank you to the administrators, and I just wanted to say that I was born and raised here in Seguin. I was a proud Matador graduate, class of '89. I bleed gold and black. My roots are here in Seguin. I am a retired combat veteran. I fought in the Persian Gulf War, Operation Restore Hold, the Battle of Somalia. I served in the Texas Army National Guard, from water rescues to firefighting missions here in the state of Texas. And so there's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer. And this is why I volunteered to run for the school board. I'm a humble and a simple person. People that know me, that I serve this board, I served it for the best interest for all the kids of Seguin ISD. I've always been a voice for the parents and the kids that did not have a voice, or for the parents that did not know how the system works. Why? Well, because when I was growing up, I didn't have that direction when I was in school. And no one should not be left behind. And I really believe everyone here on this board, and every administrator and every teacher, are doing the best that they can for these kids. And honestly, I believe it's the right thing that we all should do. And we all need to be a voice for these kids. So, to all the new incoming board members, congratulations. And remember, let's make the decisions for what is for the best interest of all the kids of Seguin ISD. So again, thank you, and go Mets, go.
Okay, we're going to move on to section 2, which is a recognition of one of our campuses, and this evening we will be featuring McWeeny Elementary School. And it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's featured campus, McWeeny. And Miss Meredith Statler serves as principal of McWeeny, and she's here tonight to highlight some of the activities and the character programs that are taking place at her campus.
Yes. Hi, good evening. When we started the year at McWeeny, we got together and as a push the button. All right, now we can hear me. We got together and together as a campus wrote a mission and a vision, and we decided that's how we were going to guide our school year, and that's what we would base our decisions out of. And our mission, I brought it because it's very eloquent and I don't want to forget a word from being nervous, but McWeeny embraces and nurtures a community of learning for all, which means every single student on our campus. And our vision is igniting passion and empowering lifelong learners. So as you can imagine, if we're going to reach every student in their area of passion and empower them to be a lifelong learner, then our ideas of education have got to get a little bit broader, a little more creative, and a little bit more innovative. So tonight, we hope that we can highlight some of the wonderful things that our teachers and students are participating in to really reach our vision. And we have a little video, and then I'm going to have some students talk a little bit about the things we're doing on campus. So we'll start with our second grade students and teachers. One of our big initiatives is to make sure that we are writing across all curriculum areas. And math, we're really pushing that, and that can be a bit of a challenge when you think foundational math, but Ms. Bartolo has done a great job, so she's going to have her talk a little bit about writing and math class.
So they're going to share their story problem that they did. This is our latest one. So we've already done 2 writing assignments so far. We just work for 10 to 15 minutes until we have it complete. We edit it, everything. So if you want to, who wants to share first? You want to go first?
I had 7 pumpkins that I carved. Then I bought 2 more pumpkins. I carved them up too. Then I put the pumpkins on the front porch. The next day, they weren't there. They were not there. I turned around and saw them. They chased me all over the place. I tell you, they tried to eat me up into pieces. Yum, 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 yum.
That's really creative, and what a great story.
Show her story. Okay. One sunny day, a unicorn was born. The unicorn did not have a horn, so she got 22 pieces of paper. That was not enough. The next day she got 22 more pieces. Then she had completed her horn. She painted it rainbow. Every other unicorn was jealous, but she was nice enough to paint everyone's horn.
Very good. I really like the way you incorporated reading and math and art.
Why they like writing and math?
I'd love to hear why they like writing and math.
To say. You want to go and tell them why you like writing and math first?
I like writing and math because you can think about anything and turn it into a math problem.
So right, yes.
I like writing and math because I can actually imagine stuff and then I can write it about it, and then there's a math problem that I can always solve.
Thank you for sharing that. Great job.
Another way that we're being innovative is our LINK program. We're one of 2 campuses that are piloting the LINK program out of TLU. It is most commonly known for 4 15-minute recesses a day. We think of them more as an unstructured break. And there's also a character component too, though, and that was highlighted a little bit in the video. So I'm going to have my first grade teachers and students come on up and tell us what our first graders are actually learning in LINK.
Well, good afternoon. I have a couple of our exceptional citizens as we're working to build them. These individuals in the first grade have participated in the Let's Inspire Innovation in Our Kids since the beginning. They love the 4 recesses, and we'd like for them to be able to not only tell you about the 4 recesses, what it does for them, but also the social aspect or the character building, which are our positive action lessons that they get every single day. They get at least 15 minutes of it. So, what do you think about them?
Positive actions are good. I like positive actions because you learn and you use them. I like positive actions because they lead to a happy heart, happy thoughts, and happy feelings.
Happy thoughts, happy actions lead to a happy heart.
I like recess because it's really fun.
What's something that we do at recess? That we did
Tell them
before?
what we get to do at recess now.
Do at recess that we never did before.
Well, we can jump ropes and play at the basketball court.
Okay. All right.
Tell
What
them
else?
what we did today.
What everybody
What
did
everybody
today.
did.
We could play games.
Okay. What we did outside and the top. That's all?
Today we played on the mulch.
On the mulch.
Oh, okay.
Kids just ran straight to it. They were all over it. That's what it's all about.
All over. What else can we do? What does most of my class do, Garrett? Climb the...
We climbed the mulch.
Today you climbed the mulch.
What else do you climb?
Monkey bars.
And
Trees.
there you go.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's nothing they were able to do before.
We always say, oh, no, you can't climb that tree.
So-
This is,
All 4 of you like having 4 recesses during the day, all right? And how do our teachers feel? Is it still adjusting?
It's very taxing, but we're waiting for that magic to happen. Research proves it, so
Yeah.
we're optimistic.
From what I hear here, it's working, yeah.
they love it.
Unstructured play, playing in mulch, sounds great to me. Yeah.
They were so excited. Now the people who have to spread that mulch by now. Because it's all flat now. But
All
we're having
right.
fun today.
Well, thank y'all for sharing.
Feel free to come by anytime, you need a little break outside. They told me earlier, I think nerves have set in, but they do play with grass and rocks and sticks and the whole 9 yards. It's very creative play all the time. And other classes walk out and say, what? There's first graders in the trees. So I'm concerned about that. And our last person is Clazel. She is the brain behind the great video, but she also offers our students a STEAM maker space on the Fridays that she is here, and I just asked her to say a few words about that.
Hi, good evening. So I'm at 2 campuses, as you know, but I've started when I'm at McWeeny on Fridays, a McWeeny Makers, I call it. And I have a spreadsheet available so teachers can sign up, and I encourage many grade levels at the same time. It's just whenever is good for them. So if they have station work or extra time, they can choose to send a group of students my way. And in the video you saw, we were using our brand new Kiva planks. Yay. So, and they were building, and it's for all students and any students, but a cool thing that happened on the first Friday was one of my GT students was in the room with some 4th graders, and she's a 5th grader, and this boy made this really awesome, elaborate thing, and he just did it immediately with Kiva planks, and it's not easy. Like, they don't know what to do because sometimes I give them a challenge that they have to solve, and other times it's just make something. That's what a makerspace is for, to figure it out. And it's, you know, science, technology, engineering, even arts and mathematics, and they have to try and fail and improve and redesign and do it again. And so this young man had this awesome idea, and she said, are you in GT? And he looked at her and he said, no. And I found out later that he is actually one of Mr. Martinez's students, and he is a special ed teacher at our campus. And I said, you have to see what this young man made, because I think we found something that he would want to work for, and he is like a star. So I love that there's so many different opportunities, and we've done circuitry and some, well, of course they love anything with wires, and so we did makey, and we did pianos, and so we're going to do cardboard, and then we have a lot of ideas coming up. But now that the kids have been once or twice, now they're like asking their teachers, hey, Makerspace is coming up, are you going to sign me up? So I got the kids on my side, and now we're going to have it overflowing, so we have more spots available. But it's going really well, and it's a lot of fun, and the kids are dying to come. So it's working out really well, and I'm so thankful that I got to start a Makerspace at McWeeny. So thank you. Thank you for your time, and y'all come visit anytime.
And y'all, thanks for coming. Students, parents, we appreciate your time this evening.
Thank
And
you,
teachers.
McWeeny Elementary.
All right. We're going to move on to item 2B, which is student, staff, board, and community recognition. And I believe we're going to start off, Dr. Gutierrez, with.
As I had mentioned earlier, the Seguin High School Choir has been working hard, as evidenced by their success in competition over the last month. Tonight, as a special treat, I have asked choir director Leo Garcia and his students to tonight's meeting for a brief performance so that we can witness firsthand the tremendous talent of these students.
Good evening. We are definitely pleased to be here to sing for you tonight. It's been a very busy fall semester for us, and a lot of exciting things have been happening with the Seguin High School Choir program. But for tonight, we'd like to sing you two pieces that we're going to perform at the Texas Renaissance Festival next week. So the kids have a lot of fun there. Yes, they do get to compete and sing Renaissance era music, but if you've ever been there, you know it's a lot of fun to just be at the Texas Renaissance Festival. So our two pieces are, the first one is an Italian called O Bella Fusa, and that'll be followed by an old Spanish song called Riu Riuciu with two soloists, Ms. Serena Vela and Mr. Chris Gonzalez. Oh, sorry, Oliver Bowles will sing it tonight. So here are our two pieces.
Este que es nacido es el gran monarca, Cristo patriarca, de carne vestido, a nos redimido, conseja ser chiquito, aunque era infinito, finito se hiciera. Chiu, riu, chiu, la guarda ribera, sueno el lobo de nuestro cordero, sueno el lobo de nuestro cordero. Pues que ya tenemos lo que deseamos, todos juntos vamos, presentes servemos, todos adheremos nuestra voluntad, pues hace igualar con el hombre viñero. Chiu, riu, chiu, la guarda ribera, sueno el lobo de nuestro cordero, sueno el lobo de nuestro cordero. Yo vi mil canciones que andaban cantando, por aquí volando, haciendo misiones, diciendo gascones, gloria sea en el cielo, y paz en el suelo, que Jesús naciera. Chiu, riu, chiu, la guarda ribera, sueno el lobo de nuestro cordero, sueno el lobo de nuestro cordero.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Wow, weren't they amazing?
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you, Seguin High School Choir, and thank you, Mr. Garcia. I also want to thank the parents and family members of our choir students for their support and their continued encouragement.
Okay. If y'all get a chance, you need to go to a choir concert. They're really good, very entertaining. We also are going to take time to recognize our the last meeting. This is the last meeting for 3 of our trustees who did not file for a re-election in the election that's going to be held on November 6th. So we do have Ishmael Flores, who has been serving for 20 years. Barbara Effenberger. Yes, give her a round of applause. That's an accomplishment. Barbara Effenberger has served on the board for 6 years, and Elena Reel has been with us for 2 years. So we've got some company for 6 years.
As Ms. Thomas Jimenez stated, tonight's meeting serves as the last regular board meeting for 3 of our trustees. I've had the pleasure of working with these individuals for about 1.5 years and am constantly impressed by their level of support and their commitment to our students and to the employees of Seguin Independent School District. Their leadership and guidance has been outstanding in the role as elected officials, and that role is often a thankless one, as Mr. Flores had expressed earlier. I do not believe that board members do get the recognition that they so deserve. Again, as Mr. Flores stated earlier, they are volunteers. They don't get paid for this job, and I'm very appreciative of everything that they do. I want to also thank those outgoing board members for making that decision to bring me to this wonderful school district, to bring me to Seguin ISD. Coming here has certainly been life-changing and has been an experience that is so rewarding every day. Collectively, these individuals have more than 25 years of service on the Seguin ISD School Board. Mr. Flores, I'm certain that during your 20 years as a trustee, you have a wealth of experience and fond memories. During your tenure, you have seen a new Barnes Middle School, a new Rodriguez Elementary, and a remodeled facility at Ball for the Early Childhood Center. You have also had the opportunity to see your children through the school system, with your daughter graduating last spring. Mrs. Effenberger, as a trustee for 5 years, 6 years, I believe, 6 years, your efforts were instrumental in the preparation and passage of the November 2013 bond election, which resulted in a high school, library, and a park for this community. Mrs. Reel, during your 2-year tenure as a trustee, you were on the board for the opening of the new Seguin High School and instrumental in the hiring of a new superintendent. With these are all the more obvious accomplishments. We know that your work has entailed countless evenings, weekends, and hours away from family to help shape the future of Seguin ISD through your support of students and employees. For that, we wish to express our sincere appreciation to you. And I'd first like to hand Mr. Flores for your service of 20 years with the plaque. Mrs. Effenberger. Mrs. Elena Reel.
Earlier this evening, we gave them all some personalized gifts, and Mrs. Effenberger really likes her apron. She's a great baker, in case you did not know that. All right, we're going to move on to item 3, which is audience with the board. And the Seguin ISD Board of Trustees designates a time for audience participation at the beginning of each meeting to hear persons who desire to make comments. In accordance with Board Policy BED Local, those wishing to speak shall sign up before the meeting begins, stating the concern or noting the agenda item they wish to address. Audience participation is limited to 5 minutes. The audience of more than 5 persons shall appoint a representative, and the board shall not deliberate any subject that is not on the posted agenda. And we do have 3 individuals who would like to visit with us this evening. We're going to start out with Mr. Leonardo Molina, who would like to talk about Want Seguin Elementary. Mr. Molina. And Mr. Jenkins over here is our timer, just to let you know. We'll wait till you get started, yeah.
Honorable. Honorable Cindy Jimenez, President, Seguin ISD Board of Directors. Honorable Dr. Matthew Gutierrez, Superintendent, Seguin ISD, and distinguished board members. Tonight I wish to speak about Want Seguin Elementary School. There are a group of us who are going to try to make this school get a designation of a National Historical Campus. And the reason for this is I will read to you what has inspired through the ages, and then hopefully that the board will take this school out from being sold until we work on what we're trying to do. Not we, just a bunch of us. Somewhere I read where I could get it, but I know it's in a book. In 1901, the state of Texas at Austin passed a law that we, Mexicanos, the the Latin Americans, were not to be educated beyond the 6th grade because we're going to be the procurers of the fruits of the land of Texas. In other words, farm workers. When I get that, I'll find it, I'll send it to you that said it. But on June 8, 1902, the Seguin School Board at its monthly meeting made a motion which stated that Mexican American children be allowed a separate school. Motion passed. David Montejano, in his book, Anglos and Mexicans in the Making of the State of Texas, from 1836 to 1896, states, on page 160, the first Mexican school was established in Central Texas, in Seguin, Texas. And the practice continued unabated until Mexican word schools existed throughout the state. By 1930, 90% of South Texas schools were segregated. By the early 1940s, separate schools for Mexican Americans existed in at least 122 school districts in 59 representative counties. Thus, the first segregated school for Mexican Americans in the state of Texas was built in Seguin. The name of the school is Once Again Elementary, and it still stands. The school was closed in 2010. Not only did Seguin establish the first segregated school for Mexican Americans in Texas, but it also designed a curriculum to condemn all Mexican Americans to a 6th grade education. Let me reread that again. Not only did Seguin establish the first segregated school for Mexican Americans in Texas, but it also designed a curriculum to condemn all Mexican Americans to a 6th grade education. The curriculum followed this pattern. Students 6, 7 years old, first year in school, big primer. Second year in school, 7 or 8 years in school, primer. Third year in school, it'd be 8 or 9 years old, low first. Fourth year in school, it'd be 9 or 10 years old, regular first. 10 to 11, 2nd grade, and then it followed a regular program. 11 to 12, 3rd grade. 12 to 13, 4th grade. 13 to 14, 5th grade. 14 and 15, 6th grade. 15, 16, 7th grade. 16, 17, 8th grade. And a lot of us drop out. I am one of those that dropped out in the 7th grade. 8th grade. I was already 7 years old. So I dropped out of school, joined the military, and went to Korea. 7 to 18 years of age, 9th grade. 18 to 19, 10th grade. 19 to 20, 11th grade. 20 or 21 or 22 graduate from high school. And many of these students might have been older because we're migrant workers. We did not get back to school until November, December, and many of us were retained. So many of our students dropped out in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades.
If you could wrap it up, Mr. Molina. Thank you, though.
Okay. Okay. The rest of the segregated schools for Mexican American students in the state of Texas followed Seguin's example. Thus, it can be said that thousands of Mexican Americans, miles de estudiantes mexicanos, throughout the state of Texas had their education stolen from them. After school integration in the 1950s, greater number of Mexican American students have from year to year graduated from Seguin High School and other high schools, and many of them have gone on to earn their college degrees. Juan Seguin Elementary School stands as a testimony of the oppression of the education of Mexican Americans during the first half of the 1900s, and why Mexican Americans of that time had such a low level of education. It also stands as a monument, giving testimony of what any minority ethnic group can achieve when given the same opportunities as is given to the rest of the country's citizens in which they live.
Okay. I think that's a great ending there. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Juan Seguin Elementary School being the first segregated school for Mexican Americans in Texas, and also containing a history of the oppression of the education of Mexican Americans, and that ethnic group exodus from such oppression toward a successful future, should once again Elementary School be awarded a historical campus designation by the state of Texas. We got to change that.
Okay.
We met with the Guadalupe County Historical Commission and said, no, we're going for the national.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. All right, moving on, we have Nolan Schmidt, who has a new book announcement for us this evening.
President Jimenez, Dr. Gutierrez, and distinguished board members. Last time I was here, I announced my first children's novel, Linnell and the Elementary School Lock-In. After that, I donated each copy of my book to each of the elementary schools. After that, I worked on several months later. I've worked my hardest, and just this past week, I have published my second book, Linnell and the Ghost of Davidson Elementary. I don't have a physical copy of the book because my approved copy to approve for extended distribution to Amazon and Barnes & Noble has not arrived in the mail yet. So I only have the picture of the cover with me. I do apologize for that. My book is currently available on sale on lulu.com, but as soon as I get my approved copy and approve the extended distribution, it will be available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other online retailers. And with the first book, I will donate a copy of the new book to each of the elementary schools.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay. And last on our list, we have Zane Holcomb, who's going to be speaking with us about the skating policy.
Right into that. Every day, before school, after school, during lunch, etc., kids are allowed to do as they please, draw, go outside, throw football as they please. But anytime anybody that tries to get on a skateboard or skate around and not in school but even up to school and on the campus, told to get off. And that is because it is a liability and that it is school policy liability. But the things I have against that, and that which is so in the liability, it means if you hurt yourself on, like, if you break a leg, if you slip on water if there's no sign up on private property, you can sue, correct? Yes. And so with skating, there are instances like in 2006, May 11th, a boy named Dustin was in a class and he was using a skateboard and he tripped and had an injury and sued and won. But the only reason he won is because it was their skateboard, it was their property, and no one was in there to watch him. And if a person willingly gets on a skateboard and falls and trips and hurts themselves, they have no ground to stand on to say that they were wronged in the instance to have the right to sue, right? And just like with skating, it's a liability, but like football and everything, you can get hurt way worse playing football than you can standing on a skateboard. And with the rule in hand, I've sat at lunch myself and watched kids blatantly break the rules, and as soon as I stand on my skateboard, it's done. And also about liability is it can happen like anywhere. Every day throughout my school day, I see food and drinks and here and there throughout the school, and people could slip, fall down, anything, and that could bring suing and everything. But it's more put around the subject of skating, and I don't agree with that. And it's come like everybody, not everybody, but the skaters of my community and everything, we want to change that, and we don't
Thank you for coming to visit with us this evening. Appreciate it. And message heard. Okay? Okay.
So how does this, like, how does this change? How does it change?
Mr. Escobar is here, I believe, so.
I was told, I was on my skateboard one morning and I was told by, I don't know her name, it was some administrator, but she told me to get off. And I said, okay, I need a reason. And she said, you know the reason, get off your skateboard. And I said, I don't know the reason, please give me a reason, and I probably will. And she said, if you don't like the rules, then go across the street whenever they have a board meeting and try and change them.
Well, we certainly appreciate you coming forward and advocating for this review of that rule and message heard.
Yeah, we can't do any debating or anything like that during this period of citizens to be heard.
When would I be able to do a debate such thing? That's what I was prepared for now.
Well, our rules state that we cannot debate anything during the citizens to be heard, but we have heard you, and you might just check back with your campus in the future. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to item 4, which would be closed session. Are we going to need to go into closed session? Or anybody have anything they'd like to go into closed session about? No? Okay. The only thing that we had that we were going to discuss was the AP recommendation for Seguin High School, and if nobody needs to go into closed session to discuss it, then we're going to skip forward to item 4B1 and section 5A, which is to reconvene. And then at this point we'll have possible action on professional personnel, including appointment, employment, evaluation, assignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public employee.
Madam President.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move that we accept the recommendation from Dr. Gutierrez on the Seguin High School Assistant Principal as he has stated.
Okay. I have a motion from Mr. Holt and a second from Mr. Amador. The individual's name is Ms. Tori Burtnagel. And is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Yes, sir?
Well, I think Dr. Gutierrez wants to speak on it, please.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Gutierrez?
I didn't look at you.
Yes, Board of Trustees, it is my honor and privilege to make this recommendation for the high school assistant principal. And that recommendation is Mrs. Tori Butenagel. And Tori, if you can come up, please. Ms. Butenagel has been in education for 13 years in Seguin ISD. During her time, she has served as a high school English teacher and most recently as the campus testing coordinator. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree and a teaching certification in English Language Arts. She also holds a master's degree in educational administration from Lamar University, along with a principal's certification. Ms. Butenagel has not only spent time in the classroom serving our students, but she has also served as a sponsor for various student groups. She has worked hard in helping all of her students excel in and out of the classroom, with emphasizing the importance of leadership and volunteerism. With an English Language Arts background, she will be able to assist others to meet the increasing demands of the STAR EOC exams in all core areas. Ms. Butenagel stated that she aspires to assist with establishing a school culture and educational program conducive to student learning. With a strong working relationship with her current staff, she will promote staff professional growth, teamwork, and collaboration. Tori Butenagel is a Seguin Matador at heart and feels she would be a great asset to the leadership team at Seguin High School.
Okay, that's quite a good background. So thank you, Dr. Gutierrez. The board has approved you. You're official now. Anything you'd like to say?
I do. I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to advance the Seguin ISD, and I am honored to serve our students and our teachers. And when I was an English teacher, I taught the book The House on Mango Street, and there was one quote that always resonated with me. The main character is reminded that she must come back to her town for others. She will always be Mango Street. She must come back to help those who cannot out and complete the circle. Like her, I will always be Seguin. I'm a proud Matador, and I'm proud to work in this district.
Tori, don't sit down just yet. We're going to take your photo.
I just want to know, is she going to stay with student council? Are you going to stay sponsoring student council? No? Don't tell the people. They're not going to be happy.
All right, we're going to move on to item 6, which are our reports and information items. We're going to start off with Seguin ISD McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Program. Ms. Legore is going to walk us through it.
Well, good evening, Board of Trustees. I have with me Teresa Cuevas, who's actually going to do the bulk of the presentation. I'm here as backup, but I know that she really doesn't need backup because she is really the expert on this, and I go to her with questions when we're talking about homeless, foster, or migrant care. So tonight, we're here to give you information about the homeless program, which will hopefully answer some questions because it's a really dynamic program that does amazing things for those students that are identified. So it's a good opportunity to let you all know what Ms. Cuevas does.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. I'm not used to the microphone, sorry, it's throwing me off a little bit. Well, my name is Teresa Cuevas. I'm a social worker and I deal with the McKinney-Vento program, migrant and foster care. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Assistance Act, it provides a definition that is only for the educational world. So a lot of the other government agencies don't use that same definition. So it's very much broader concept of what homelessness is. So it's any student that lacks a fixed, regular, adequate nighttime residence. So it has to be like a temporary housing situation for them. And the situations that they live in are emergency family violence shelters. So in Seguin, all of the students that are residing in the domestic violence shelter qualify for the program, which I think that makes sense with everybody's definition of what they think constitutes homeless. And then also students that are in hotels or motels. Maybe they've been evicted or they've lost their housing for another reason, and so they're forced to stay in hotels or motels. It's not a fancy hotel. We're talking about the lower end hotels, like the Seguin Motel, the ones that are kind of close to here, to the high school. We also find out that families are doubled up in those hotels and motels, so sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 families in a one-room hotel room. So that's why they're homeless. Public or private places that usually people don't sleep in, vehicles, barns, parks, sheds, garages. We have had a few students staying in those types of situations, but it is very small amount of students that we're talking about. Whenever we have a family that is in that type of situation, I do reach out to them and try to provide some kind of assistance to get a more stable housing situation because we don't want our families staying in those kind of situations. Substandard housing, no electricity, no running water, that would qualify them, and also overcrowded conditions. So a lot of our families that qualify under that situation are because there might be staying in a 2-bedroom home and there's like 10, 15 people living in the home. So that would be overcrowded conditions. And then sharing the housing of other persons, either relatives, friends, due to a loss of housing or some type of economic hardship. And it's a temporary situation until they can get back on their feet and find their own place to stay. The majority of the families that I work with are in that situation. The doubled up are the motels. Another category of students that are identified with the McKinney-Vento Act is unaccompanied youth. Those are any student that is not living with a parent or legal guardian. And there's no age range for that, so we could have an elementary student, but most of the time it's high school students that are, for whatever reason, they're not living with their parents or legal guardians. Sometimes they're kicked out of their homes. Sometimes they run away from home. Even if the parent wants them back and wants them to return to home, they still have to be identified as homeless according to this law. And also students sometimes are abandoned by their parents. Sometimes they go out of town or they go out of state and they leave the children with other family members or with friends. the identification of homeless students. How do we identify them? How do we find them? The state of Texas requires all school districts to use shared student residency questionnaires. And there's like a little snippet in there about some of the questions, but this is how it looks. Every student that's enrolled in school has to fill it out, and it has questions that are connected to the definition, and it's kind of like a pre-screener for me so that I can look through it and see if they might qualify for the program, and then I follow up with a phone call or an interview of the family or the student to determine their eligibility. And just to keep in mind, this is ongoing throughout the whole school year. The bulk of my identification is in the beginning of the school year because everybody, when they enroll, they have to fill out this form. So I'm looking at 7,500 of these papers and trying to determine if they're homeless or not. But throughout the school year, when they transfer to a different campus or you have a new enrollee, they also have to fill out this form. So it's year-round identification of students. And all registrars, attendance clerks, all staff members are trained on the identification of the students and who qualifies for the program and what types of services we provide. And then here's some statistics. I went back as far as 2016, 2017. As you can see, most of the time we have about 220 to 230 students identified each school year. And then if you look at the statistics, you can see that the majority of students that are homeless are 5th grade and below. There are some reasons why I think that might be. Usually when students are younger, their parents tend to be younger, and oftentimes they're not able to afford their home housing because they're kind of starting out their lives. Consistently, 2 to 3% of students that are identified as homeless that's 2 or 3% of the student population. And that goes in line with the U.S. When you look at the reports over other school districts in the U.S., they're also identified in about 2 or 3% of their populations. This affects all grade levels, all campuses. There's not one campus that has all the homeless students and one that does not. It's across all campuses. 15 to 17% are pre-K, 42 to 45% are elementary, and 10 to 13 are middle school, and 24 to 29 are high school. The majority of our families that I'm working with are single parents, single moms usually with young children. And then 2/3 of the homeless students that are identified at the high school campus are unaccompanied youth. So they're not living with their parents, they're not living with guardians. And we don't really calculate the gender data, but for the most part, we think it's pretty even. We had some other questions that were asked about our homeless program. Do homeless students have extended families? Yes, they do. A lot of times they've been homeless more than once in their lifetime. So the family has continued to struggle. It's like the cycle of poverty. So they've kind of exhausted their resources in the community, so they can't get assistance. Sometimes they've exhausted their resources with their family, or the family members, other relatives are in the same boat, and so they're not able to help them themselves. So that's why they're in a homeless situation. And then what it brought about the homelessness, there's so many factors that can cause a family to fall into homelessness. I always like to say that really anyone can become homeless, because all it takes is a loss of a job, a medical crisis, or like we've seen in the news and in the past, natural disasters, fires. At one point a few years back, there was a fire at Summers Bend, and a lot of families became homeless. Hurricanes, we've had a lot of students coming in from hurricanes and floods. So that's the majority of the reasons why they become homeless. The HUD Certifier program, that's something new that just came out with the new ESSA guidelines. And when I went to the Texas Conference on Homelessness, they offered a training for us to go ahead and become HUD certifiers. So I went ahead and did that because I thought that would be a good opportunity to benefit the students and the families. Basically what it means is just that I can pre-qualify families for HUD programs for housing assistance. And so they kind of don't have to jump through so many hoops to get assistance, and it expedites their services. So that's why I did that, so that hopefully we can assist them to overcome homelessness a little bit quicker. And now we're going to hear a video about homeless students and how sometimes they're invisible in the public school system. Technology cooperates. It's hanky.
Yeah.
There it
is. Research has shown that homeless children face a range of challenges to their health, emotional well-being, and safety.
and that these challenges can affect their experiences in school. A new analysis in the Condition of Education report explores the latest data on student homelessness in U.S. public schools. The report uses data from the Department of Education's EdFacts collection to describe rates of student homelessness and how they vary across the country. The analysis also describes the characteristics of the homeless student population. During the 2014-15 school year, 2.5% of U.S. public school students were identified as homeless, meaning that they lacked a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. 76% of homeless students were doubled up or sharing housing due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or other reasons such as domestic violence. 7% were living in hotels or motels, and 14% were living in shelters, transitional housing, or awaiting foster care placement. 3% were unsheltered, for example, those living in cars, parks, and abandoned buildings. 8% of homeless children were also categorized as unaccompanied youth, meaning that they were not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. This group includes runaway youth, youth who have been separated from their family due to conflict or loss of contact, and youth living with a caretaker who is not their legal guardian. 14% of homeless students were identified as English language learners. By comparison, 9% of all public school students were English language learners. A higher percentage of homeless students are students with disabilities, 17%, compared to 13% of all public school students. In 2014-15, the rate of student homelessness was highest in city districts compared to town, rural, and suburban districts. The rates of homelessness were lowest in the suburbs, yet these districts enrolled 422,000 homeless students. 578,000 homeless students were enrolled in city districts, while smaller numbers were enrolled in rural and town districts. These data show that student homelessness is a challenge for communities across the country. You can learn more about homelessness in U.S. public schools by visiting nces.ed.gov to read the full report and explore data for your state or school district.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I did notice on your chart with statistics that you have to date. We have 119. Does that number go up throughout the year?
Yes.
It does? Okay.
And the busy months are usually like right after Christmas, January, that time, January, February, we start seeing a lot of families become homeless.
All right. Thanks for bringing this information to the board.
Yes, sir.
I presume that after they graduate, there's no statistics as to what happens to them if they're still in this condition.
Yeah, I mean, I do try to keep up with my students. So I do know a lot of them do go on to college or trade school or join the military. And usually they aren't in a homeless situation, but there's not any, I'm not, researching it fully to get that data.
Any other questions? If not, thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6B, we're going to have Ms. Whitman talk to us about bilingual education, exception and ESL waiver from TEA. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, President Thomas Jimenez, Dr. Gutierrez, members of the board. This is an information item to let the school district know. I think we've given you some information in the weekly updates based on staffing and bilingual certified teachers. I gave you some information in this agenda item for our elementary schools. There's 27 elementary teachers serving our bilingual classrooms with 24 completely certified. That leaves us 3 that are ESL certified, and all 3 are lacking one component of the bilingual test, and that's the BTLPT, which is challenging across the state. With that said, we are putting in a waiver with TEA for a recommendation to cover the certification for this school year. We have to make sure that we follow a corrective action plan, and I've worked with Dr. Valenta in putting that waiver together, and it basically identifies what our needs will be in the future, and then what are we doing for recruitment and also retention to keep some of our bilingual certified teachers here as well. Also, there's a new component that we haven't had to ask for before, and that's the ESL waiver. And that is new changes that came along in July of 2018. We have, at the secondary level, identified ESL teachers that service our sheltered students, our recent immigrants that come over in a pull-out program, so they get support, individualized support at each of those campuses. Now with the new changes, and this hit HR all summer, and it's been blowing up because now with the new changes, any student, even if they're in the monitored status, they have to be serviced by an English Language Arts ESL certified teacher. All of our English Language Arts teachers are certified in that area. There are several still lacking that ESL component. So even if it's a dual credit junior high school taking advanced English, but they were a identified LEP student and now being monitored, they are still required to be serviced by an ESL certified teacher. So we have some things in the works that we plan on doing. One, we're going to ask that all of our English Language Arts teachers obtain this ESL certification, but not at their own expense. We are going to offer an ESL Academy in the spring and hopefully again in the summer, and also we will reimburse them for their exam. We've done this in the past, but what we have found is they'll go through the academy and they don't want to go take the exam, so we've got to encourage them to try it, and maybe knowing that we're going to pay for the exam will help motivate them to take that. But with new hires, it's now going to become a regulation, and most of the universities are pushing that ESL requirement across the board. It's just good, solid teaching practices. So this information was sent to TEA yesterday, and they received it as of today. So this is an information item to let you know that we are applying for this exception for the bilingual teachers and a waiver for the secondary teachers. Any questions?
Mr. Hope?
Ms. Whitman, we discuss this every year when we talk about staffing, but the pool is very small out there for ESL and bilingual teachers. Do you see this being a huge hindrance on actually getting even more?
Oh yes.
I mean, I just initially I'm thinking that it's just going to make it that much harder to get.
We did some projections, especially with our new dual language program, and many schools now are adopting the dual language program in lieu of the early exit models and late exit models. Dual language is what the trend is, which requires 2 teachers almost at every grade level, 1 ESL, 1 bilingual certified, but the demands we're looking at right now, we have 4 in kinder. In 2020, 2021, we're going to need 8. So we're looking at doubling our demand in the next 4 years. So part of our charge, like today, I went with Andrea Jaramillo and Dr. Valenta. We went to TLU. We presented to the Spanish majors that are in the advanced classes that are going to graduate with a Spanish degree. They're not in the education program. They're going through Dr. Gonzalez's program with TLU. She came to us and said, maybe they might be interested. So we presented to them today. We have 2 already. One is taking a Spanish vacancy for us right now. We're working on this certification. And these folks have the true Castilian, beautiful, formalized Spanish. I don't think they'll have a challenge with some of the exams. The second has a master's degree in Spanish. So we're trying to partner with TLU even more. She's even going to talk to the department heads in science and chemistry and even mathematics for us to tap into these folks that are content savvy to look at going into education. So we have 2 right now and that's 2 that we wouldn't have. So we have those things in the works. The demands are going to get more. I don't foresee us not having to go for a bilingual exception in the future. ESL, I think we can get to the point where we can cover that because it's going to be a demand everywhere with universities. But I still think we're going to battle the bilingual certified requirements.
Any further questions? All right, thank you, Ms. Whitman. Moving next on to item 6C, which is the Seguin ISD 2017-18 bilingual ESL, or English as a Second Language program evaluation with Texas Language Proficiency Assessment or TELPAS results. Mr. Schmidt and Dr. Valenta.
President Thomas Jimenez, members of the board, Dr. Gutierrez. I am going to be turning this over to Dr. Valenta at this time. She's going to really be providing the evaluation, and I will be here for moral support.
Primero, gracias para recibir los estudiantes de Seguin. And so thank you to Mr. Flores and where's Ms. Effenberger? And Ms. Real for serving our students here in Seguin the many years that you all have served as board members. So thank you. So I'm here to provide a program evaluation and really looking at our bilingual and ESL programs over the 17-18 school year. So remember, this program evaluation is looking at the program last year. Next school year, we will look at this year's program evaluation. There we go. So last year in 17-18, we had the transitional bilingual model, and it was the early exit program. And the early exit program requires students to exit the program within 2 to 5 years. And so you're looking at students exiting the program, basically some in second grade, possibly even in first grade. So they were exiting the program very early on, and their language of instruction was primarily English, and so that's the way the program was run in previous years. And again, it's called the transitional early exit model, and it's really to emphasize English very early on in their transition. At the secondary level, we have what's called ESL pullout model, and what we have is an ESL teacher to serve our newcomers and our recent immigrants, recent arrivals, and then with the rest of the students that are considered long-term English learners, we have an ESL teacher who will support them. But daily we have, for our newcomers, they're actually in an English as a second language classroom. Chapter 89, which is basically our bilingual laws that the Texas Education Agency gives to all school districts, and they must follow them. There's 3 important items that I would like to highlight. And first of all, we need to make sure that every year, annually, we are presenting our progress on our program with our students, and that also parents are given a notification on their child's progress. And so that's item A, B, and C right here. So last year, and I have the 2 previous years as well, beginning in 15-16, what you see here are the parental denials. So these are the number of students in which parents have denied the either bilingual or ESL program. So you can see that from 2015-16, we were at 23, 31, and then 32 in 17-18. And then the other 2 columns are monitored students. So once students exit the program, we still have to monitor them. So they don't exit the program and we say goodbye and we don't focus and look at their academic progress. They finish the program and we still have to monitor them. So those students are year 1 and 2, the 2 columns at the end. And again, those numbers may be a little different because by the second year, some of those may have been included high school students, seniors that have left already, or just students that never came back to our school district, and so they're monitored at their new school district. These are our enrollment numbers over the past 3 years here in Seguin. So our English learners, we started out in 15-16 with 760 students, and last year we ended the year in 17-18 with 693. So we stay around 10% of our total student population. They're designated as our English learners. We also have here the number of students that have actually exited the program. And so we have, starting in 15-16, 10%, followed by 16-17, 11%, and then 17-18, we have 7% of our students that exited the program. These are our total numbers by campus, and we have the percentages. We also have our numbers for our recent immigrants, recent arrivals. So Rodriguez is definitely our elementary campus that has the highest population of English learners. And again, last year, remember, we had the bilingual program at all 7 elementary campuses, and therefore you see, for example, Jefferson, Weinert, their numbers, and McWeeny are pretty low because at this time last year, they only had kinder and first grade classrooms. These are numbers for our secondary campuses. Again, AJB was our campus that had all of our newcomers last year, and so next year at this time when we do the same program evaluation, the numbers will be a little different because now Barnes this year has newcomers as well. But that's why you see a little discrepancy there between Barnes and AJB. TELPAS is basically, think of TELPAS is the equivalent of STAR. TELPAS is an additional test that our English learners take in 4 different areas, and that's listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And it's a state mandated test, and again, it's just as important as our STAR test because it monitors the progress of students in English. These are our scores, so when students take the TELPAS, we get their results in these categories. So they're beginners, intermediate, advanced, or advanced high. And obviously we want them to score at the advanced and advanced high levels in the 4 different areas that they're tested. Yes.
Okay, before we get too far, I just want to check. Okay, we saw the parent denials. That number was high. So when, correct me if I'm not too sure about this. When a parent denies a child to exit the program, that means that child is going into regular, I'm going to use the generic terms, regular ed, meaning they're going to test STAR. Correct?
Correct. So when a parent...
So how are their scores in the STAR compared to what it would be in a TELPAS score? Is that being monitored? Because obviously that affects our scores in overall district. And obviously I don't want to look at scores as a STAR, but that's what the state scores us on. Is that, are the principals, the teachers doing their due diligence with the parents to say, hey, it's not a good recommendation to pull your child out of this program because it's probably not going to be as strong in a STAR testing, because we've seen some of those STAR questions. And so is that due diligence being done with the parents?
Yes.
I would assume yes.
You have done your homework, Mr. Flores. Yes, that is what we constantly talk about.
Yeah, because some of those parent denials are pretty high, and I just,
Right.
Because a lot of
Dr.
parents don't
Valenta.
understand that.
In an effort
Yes.
to be transparent, can you discuss the past practice compared to
Yeah,
the current
please.
Yes,
practice?
yes. Okay, so parent denials, it's basically
Can we go back to that, please, the
Sure.
parent denials, because I was like, wow, that's a lot.
Yes. Okay, so a parent.
And then the monitor years, please, those are high too.
Yes.
So explain that, please.
Okay, so parent denials, basically, what we do is we test students, and we get an oral proficiency level, and we determine, yes, they qualify for a bilingual program. What happens is that some parents refuse the program. Just as parents can refuse special education, parents can refuse gifted and talented programs, so they're refusing the program. So we have to honor that. However, they're still considered an English learner. So we put them in a classroom, and they do not have to be, they're not put with a bilingual teacher or an ESL teacher because the parents have denied the program services. And so does that impact? It does impact students a lot, because basically it's like saying a special ed student is eligible for services, but we're not really providing them. So it's basically the same thing. And yes, our principals know the number of denials, and they're looked at through the lens of any other student that's coded as or one of our special populations, because they count just as much as any other student, whether they're in the program or not. So one of the things that we decided to do differently was really have parents speak to me so that I can discuss the benefits of the program and staying in the program. I know that previously the practice was that principals would get that opportunity to talk to parents, and parents would express their concerns and want to sign the denial paper. And so I wanted to remove the principals from the equation, just because I didn't want them, the parents are going to have to work with them all year, and I didn't want them to feel that the parents are being forceful and saying you've got to stick with the program. And so I said I will handle that, and I will talk to the parents. And so the parents come here to central office and meet with me, and we discuss the benefits of the program, and I show them data and how students that are served in a bilingual program outperform students that are in a program outperform students that have been denied services.
So there's research that's provided to the parent so that they can see the benefits of their students being receiving the services. And it takes away the principal from being in that really, which can be a compromising situation. But what we also had happening, we had principals in place that absolutely did not want bilingual programming on their campus. And so you had a practice where it was encouraged that parents would deny services. The conversations didn't happen, and that's why our numbers were where they were. So this makes it less complicated for a principal, but we had intentional practices at a campus that we have discussed as of late, where there was a desire to not have bilingual programming at the campus, and so it was easy for a parent to deny.
So they have to go through one more channel. They have to get here to me, and I meet with them. And like I said, sometimes it takes about 30 to 45 minutes, and I'm really selling the program is what I'm doing, and I'm showing the parents data. If you keep your child in the program and allow us to serve your child, they will be successful.
Dr. Valenta,
yes.
What are some of the reasons the parents are using for wanting their kid not to be in the program? I mean, it serves to me that it would be a benefit to their child, would it not?
Well, some of the reasons are they really feel that they are in this country and they want their child to learn English only. And I tell them, you are giving your child a gift by nurturing their native language in addition to adding English as their second language. So your child's going to walk out of our school district with 2 languages, and that's the greatest gift that you can give them. And I think they just feel, especially now,
in the way that our world is, they're just a little hesitant, but I tell them about all the benefits to speaking a second language, simple as a monetary benefits. You know, when you go to a job, I tell them your child, when they apply for a job, may have more opportunities and earn more because they have that second language. You know, they're strong and proficient in both languages, their native language as well as the second language that they've learned.
And what makes a difference now when you walk into these dual language campuses, you see both languages on display throughout the building. So the campuses are fostering and nurturing that native language, and parents are seeing that the district is embracing it. So that's certainly having an impact as well. But another thing that Dr. Valentis discussed, she shared that students were receiving Spanish instruction in kinder first. I want to really make sure that you all have a good understanding of that level of Spanish instruction that was occurring last year. It was very minimal. In fact, as you all know, I visit campuses on a very regular basis. I not one time saw Spanish instruction happening in the district.
Right. It's early. The early exit model was highly emphasized, and you would stand in a bilingual classroom and not know that you were in a bilingual classroom because there wasn't a single word that was uttered in Spanish or anything posted on the walls that would indicate that that was a bilingual classroom. And so if those were the practices before in promoting English instruction very, very early on in that transition, then I can see why parents may have felt that resistance to be served in the program if they walked into our campuses and didn't see that we truly are embracing both languages. But again, those of you who have gone to visit, I know that you saw firsthand the difference. I mean, from the moment you walk in to the signage all around the campus, not just in the bilingual classrooms, but really as a district embracing both languages. Because I tell parents all the time, we're probably one of the few countries, right, that are only promoting one language. You go to other countries and students can speak many languages, and then those students, we talk about, well, they outperform students here in America. Well, guess what? They also know more than one language. So I really try to tell them all the benefits as their students get older, and as our new dual language program grows, there's a lot of benefits. If the program grows to secondary, what happens in a dual language is that by the time they get to middle school, they're actually taking their high school Spanish. And then when they get to high school, they're taking their college credits. So when they graduate high school, some of them can have a minor in Spanish. And so I tell them that's going to also save you money. So on the fewer foreign language classes that your child may have to take in college.
Can I ask you about the TELPAS really quick? So
Yes.
at what grade levels are they tested? Is it every single grade level?
Yes, so
For
TELPAS is
listening.
kinder, yes.
Okay.
We have kinder through 12, and I just want to also reiterate the fact that TELPAS has changed. Just as, you know, few years back, STAR was just paper, pencil, and now we have online testing. Well, guess what? The same thing has happened in our bilingual and ESL world. TELPAS is now offered online. It's not offered, it is online for our speaking and our listening, which was brand new this past year. So before, it was holistically rated. So teachers would just rate a student on a proficiency level given a rubric. And now students have to actually sit at the computer, they have headphones, they have to speak into a microphone. So it's very different, the practices and how we are assessing our students, even with state tests such as TELPAS.
And just to clarify, TELPAS is not in addition to the STAR. They take the TELPAS instead of the STAR if they're ELL, right? Correct?
No, they take both.
They just still take both. Okay.
Right. Yep. Sorry, English learners have to take both. TELPAS is a little before we have our Spring Star administration. And again, one of the components in Chapter 89 discusses the progress that we have to discuss progress with our parents. And so every year annually, just as we do with special education students, and we all know that we have to have an ARD meeting annually to discuss the progress, it's no different with our English learners. Every year we have to have a meeting and discuss their progress, and parents have to be notified on that. In addition to that, every 6 weeks, we are having academic LPAC meetings in which students that are failing that 6 weeks in secondary campuses or 9 weeks at an elementary campus, we have to reconvene as a committee to discuss, what are the issues that students are facing and why are they not being successful in the classroom. And so we have to come up with a plan and how we are going to address that with each and every student. Our bilingual and ESL teachers have to continue again with professional development. And these are some of the opportunities that were offered last year. Of course, we have bilingual directors meeting in which I attend at our region service center, at our educational service center. We have to have our LPAC training annually to anybody that participates in our LPAC meetings at the campus level. We also have and I think Dot Whitman mentioned that earlier, we have our ESL Academy every summer in which teachers can sign up for a 3-day professional development opportunity here in our district, and it's provided by our Education Service Center. After they take the 3 days of ESL Academy, they're able to take the certification test. And again, our bilingual ESL parental involvement training, we have to have parent representatives in our LPAC meetings, and so they are part of the training process annually. And then we have our bilingual and ESL parent orientation. Actually, just 2 weeks ago or last week, I know that both of our middle schools even had a parent ESL information night. And so each campus had the opportunity to let parents know what kind of programs they offer for students that are in the English as a Second Language program. Do you have any more questions?
Thanks, it sounds like we're headed in the right direction.
We are. We're excited.
When we hear this presentation next year, things are going to be very different.
Very different, because next year we will have dual language information embedded within our presentation. And we do have now official dual language programs or brochures, so you're invited to take one. I know we have Andrea Jaramillo, and I would like to recognize, she is our multilingual coordinator and works very closely with me, and especially that curriculum aspect. And we have Miss Luna, who does a very important job. Everything that we do, students and programs, students have to be coded in PEAMS or TEAMS, and that goes towards our accountability. So if students are not coded correctly, we get errors, and so that's a very important job. And so Miss Luna is here to make sure that every student is coded correctly in our program. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you all.
All right. Moving on to item 6D, we have a report on the Board of Trustees continuing education hours. And this is in accordance with House Bill 2563 and the Texas Education Code section 11.159B. And so each school board must reflect in the official minutes of the meeting before an election is held for trustees whether each board member has met or is deficient in meeting the training requirements. In June of 2018, the State Board of Education adopted rules that said that the board president announced the continuing education hours at the last regular board meeting before the election of trustees. So we have 4 levels, of different types of training. So a number of you are in the audience or running for office, so you're going to get to take some training if you win, when you're sitting up here. So Tier 1 is an area orientation for all newly elected or appointed board members. And you've got to go through the local orientation of your district and also receive an orientation to the Texas Education Code. And experienced board members have to receive an update to the Texas Education Code after each legislative session. Tier 2, team building. Each year, all members of the board and the superintendent must participate as a group in team building sessions intended to enhance the Team of 8's effectiveness. Tier 3, this is called discretionary continuing education. And first-year board members must receive at least 10 hours of additional continuing education. Experienced board members must receive at least 5 hours of continuing additional education. And the Tier 4 is on student achievement. So during the 2017 legislative session, Senate Bill 1566 was passed, and this introduced a new required training for trustees of at least 3 hours on evaluating student academic performance and the oversight role of the board. So state law requires that all board members who were serving as of September 1, 2017 had to complete this training before September 1, 2018. And then all newly elected or appointed board members must complete the training within their first 120 days. And then all board members will need to complete this training every 2 years. So we want to move on to our chart that shows the current board. Shows us in Tier 1. None of us were new to the board, so we weren't required to do any training. Tier 2, which is team building and assessment, it gives you the dates where we had our Team of 8 trainings. Tier 3, this is continuing education in assessed needs. So Mr. Flores had 5¼ hours, John Holt had 25 hours, Barbara Effenberger 17 hours, Carl Jenkins 17¾ hours, Cindy Thomas Jimenez 24 hours, Ben Amador 23½ hours, Elena Real 11¾ hours. And then Tier 4, which was the student achievement, which was required, we all got our 3 hours on the student achievement. So everybody on this board has exceeded the number of hours that are required by the state of Texas. Anybody want to report on anything else? No? All right. I think we need to take a 5-minute break. So I propose that we take a break. It is 8:23. Let's try to be back in our chairs around 8:28. There we are. We're going to reconvene. It is now 8:30, and we're moving on to our consent agenda items. This is Section 7. And BE policy local states that the consent agenda shall include items of a routine and/or recurring nature grouped together under one action item. All such items shall be acted upon by one vote without separate discussion unless a board member requests that an item be withdrawn for individual consideration. The remaining items shall be adopted under a single motion and vote as applicable. First up, we have 7A, approval of board minutes, the amended regular meeting minutes for August 28th, the special meeting on September 10th, 2018, the special meeting of September 11th, 2018, the special meeting September 20th, the regular meeting September 25th, 2018, and a board workshop on October 15th, 2018. B, we have the approval of tax collection reports for September 2018. C, approval of proposed amendment, budget amendments and financial statements for September 2018. D, approval of donations received in September 2018. E, approval of investment report for the first quarter 2018-19. F, approval of tax roll levy for the 2018 tax year. G, approval of the resolution approving examinations for acceleration or to earn credit, and the resolution of the credit by exam audit process. And H, information regarding an interlocal agreement with communities and schools for integrated student support services. Does anybody need to have anything pulled from the consent list? All right. If not, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Holt. Do I hear a second? Second from Mr. Amador. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Passes 7-0. Moving on to our action items, we have 8A, which is the approval of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, for the year ending June 30th, 2018. Mr. Hilbert.
Thank you, President Jimenez, members of the board, Superintendent Gutierrez. I'd like to acknowledge the two individuals, first off, that are handing these the letters that go in conjunction with the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. That was Denise Erlinson as well as Sally Eckert. They are an integral part of all aspects of business operations for Seguin ISD. Ms. Erlinson was the one that took the lead in collaborating with the auditors this year and providing them the documentation that comes from a multitude of sources. It doesn't just come from the business department. We work with the HR department. We work with each of the federal programs, including child nutrition, as well as other areas within operations of the district. So Ms. Erlinson was integral in gathering information as requested by the auditors. And then, of course, you know Ms. Eckert, she works very closely with your PEAM submissions on the financial side, as well as all of the financial reports that you see on a monthly basis. She pulls those together, as well as your budget amendments and a lot of other things behind the scenes. So both of them are to be commended for their hard work. With that, I'd like to now introduce, actually you know him, this is Mr. Jimmy Ramel. He is the lead auditor for Maxwell Lock & Ritter, the audit firm that has been with Seguin ISD for a few years now, and he's going to present some information regarding the 17-18 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, often referred to as the CAFR. Mr. Ramel.
So good evening, President Thomas Jimenez, fellow board members, Dr. Gutierrez. As Tony mentioned, we'll be going over the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018, and what was handed out to you just now. This is a required communications of the governing body at the end of the audit, which we'll also cover as we go through the slides. And as you recall from earlier, we did meet with Mr. Amador and Mr. Flores a couple weeks ago and went through this report, which, as you will see, has gotten longer each year in great detail. So we're just going to touch on some of the high points this evening. And if you have any questions for me as we go along, just let me know. So this just gives a kind of an overview of what's included in the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Nothing new as far as what's been in there from prior years. Kind of gives the various sections that we've been going through as part of the presentation tonight. So we are issuing an unmodified or clean opinion on district's financial statements for the year ending June 30, 2018, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as an external auditor. And so that's the first paragraph that's on this page. The second paragraph, we actually had an additional paragraph in our audit opinion this year because we implemented a new accounting standard. And we'll go through that here in a little bit as we go a couple slides in. But anytime there's a significant change related to an adoption of a new standard, it requires us to not only obviously incorporate it in the financial report, but also specifically point it out in our audit opinion. So we just want to show that to you because that is something that's new. If you were here, I guess 3 years ago when we had a similar standard that was implemented, you'll see that we also have a statement in there as well, in our opinion. So this just gives a high-level overview of your statement of net position. So this is a presentation that's similar to a for-profit type entity. So you guys operate on your fund financial statements. So this is not exactly what you operate on, but it gives kind of an overall presentation of what the financials will look like. The main items that you wouldn't necessarily see in your funds are your capital assets, your long-term debt. And so overall, you actually had an increase in your net position of about $4.3 million for fiscal year 18. But if you go down to the bottom of the slide, you'll see that your overall net position is actually negative. So I just wanted to kind of briefly explain why that is. So as I mentioned before, there was a new standard that was implemented during this year's audit. It relates to the district's participation in the TRS Care healthcare program. So what it required us to do is at a given point in time, that liability is measured. And any district, which all Texas school districts are participating in, you get your proportionate share of that overall net liability that gets put on your statement of net position. So what happened was at the end of fiscal 18, your ending liability related to just TRS care was about $25 million. What we also had to do is we had to bring on a beginning liability, which requires to basically restate your deposition for fiscal year 17. And that restatement was actually $44 million. So it actually went down pretty significantly between fiscal 17 and fiscal 18. But they measure this liability at a given point in time. It's not necessarily something the district would actually have to pay out, but it just kind of gives a better idea of ultimately what are the overall responsibilities and obligations that the district may have to incur in the future. And as I mentioned, all districts are implementing this year. A lot of districts will probably be in a similar situation where you'll have a negative net position number on your statement of net position. But just as a reminder, you operate using your fund financial statements, so your fund balance is positive. So that's always, when we're looking at as far as future economic health of the district, we're definitely focusing more on your fund balance in your statement of net position. But we also don't want to disregard this completely and let you know that this is something that you'll see now on a go-forward basis related to this statement. And so this just kind of points out, kind of shows the graphic of kind of why you're negative. So if you recall, the net pension liability was implemented about 3 years ago. And so that liability, along with your net OPEB liability for your TRS care, is why now your net position is negative. And good thing is those numbers have been trending downward, but once again, they're measuring it at a given point in time, so a lot of factors are involved in coming up with those estimated liabilities. So this is focusing now on your fund financial statements. So you'll see for your general operating fund, your ending fund balance is about $29.1 million, which is actually an increase. And we'll actually go into a little more detail on the next slide of kind of maybe more of the operating effect of the spending and revenues that were incurred during fiscal 18. Of that $29.1 million, $26 million is considered unassigned, which means it's available for general operations, and that's well within the PA recommended guidelines of what your unassigned fund balance should be. And also point out here is your debt service fund, and also in your non-major governmental, that's your special revenue or grant funds, as well as your capital projects funds, which are your construction bond funds. You'll see a decrease by about $11.1 million. That's expected because you're spending down bond proceeds. So as you spend those down, obviously your fund balance related to those funds will decrease as well. So as I mentioned, even though overall your general fund balance increased, when you factor or when you take out the transfer that was made from your capital projects fund to your general fund and just look at the revenues versus expenditures, you actually had a deficit of about $2.9 million. What this table is showing is it factors in the impact that the QZEB bonds have on that deficit. So if you recall in fiscal 17, you had proceeds that came in, so you had an influx of funds, but not a lot of expenditures going out. So as you're spending down those proceeds, obviously you're not having a revenue or any kind of other funding source coming in, but you're incurring expenditures. So that's going to bring down your overall, or increase your overall expenditures and bring down your overall fund balance. So what this table is showing is you'll see if you take the $2.9 million deficit, you back out the QZEB impact, which was about $5.4 million in fiscal 18, you actually had, from just general operations of the district, an increase in your fund balance of about $2.5 million. And at the bottom of this slide, you'll see how that number was determined for your QZEB spending, basically taking the amount left over at the end of fiscal 17 and the amount left over at the end of fiscal 18 to arrive at the amount that was spent using QZEB proceeds. And the remaining amount of QZEB proceeds will actually be spent in fiscal year 19. So on a recurring basis, this will be something that won't necessarily have as much impact as it did in this year's financial statements. So just kind of point out a couple of items on the general fund budget actual. There were no overages in your expenditures by function for your general fund. On the revenue side, you actually had a little bit higher revenue than estimated, and it was primarily due to property tax revenue. Having higher assessed values obviously will lead to higher revenue that comes in for your general fund. This just gives a kind of overall of your internal service funds, which is your workers' comp fund, and then your enterprise fund, which is the Oak Park Mall fund, and just shows the ending net position as well as the year-over-year change with those funds. Other financial highlights, just want to point out at the end of fiscal 18, you had about $144 million of bonds / tax maintenance notes, which are USABs. Of that, $12 million is due to principal and interest in fiscal 19. As we saw earlier, you have about $9.4 million of fund balance in your debt service fund to make those payments during fiscal 19. So this is in very good shape to make the debt service payments during the year. And then getting back to that new standard that was implemented, and you'll see when you're looking through the full report, there's a new footnote that's now included along with some new additional required supplemental schedules. And footnote 13 is the new footnote related to that participation in TRS care. And just gives some more information about how liability is calculated, some of the assumptions that are being made. So every year that will be updated. And it's very similar to what we did, once again, 3 years ago when we implemented the pension standard for your participation in the TRS pension plan. But it did, unfortunately, increase the size of your report, probably about 10 pages each year. So as part of our audit, we are also auditing under government auditing standards. So we issue a report that goes over our kind of review of those standards and how it impacted the district's financials this year. So we're pleased to report that we had no material weaknesses in internal control, and also there were no instances of noncompliance that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. And then an additional report is we're reviewing the district's federal programs, and we select major programs to test every year as part of our audit. So we do actually issue an opinion on that testing, and so we are issuing an unmodified or clean opinion on our testing of the district's federal program this year, and also we noted no material weaknesses in internal control over compliance for those federal programs. So we tested the Title I program this year, and as a reminder, there's a lot of factors that go into which programs we test. We're looking at things as far as risk, amount of expenditures that are incurred. So Title I, your special ed program, and UG Child Nutrition are the 3 main programs that we'll test on a rotating basis. And then overall, you actually incurred about $8.1 million of federal expenditures during fiscal year 18. And so getting back to the letter that I handed out earlier, this just once again just kind of summarizes kind of the audit process and its required communication at the end of the audit. Just want to point out that we had no difficulties in performing the audit. We had no disagreements during the audit. None of the misstatements that we came up with were material to the financial statements. And we also just want to make sure we give thanks to Tony, Denise, Sally, everyone here at the district for all their assistance. As Tony mentioned, it's a lot of work dealing with us. We're on site usually 2 to 3 weeks in the fall, so we definitely appreciate all their assistance that they gave us this year during the audit. And with that, I'll open up to any questions you guys might have for me.
Mr. Flores, Mr. Amador, I know y'all spent some time looking at this as well. You have any additional information for us?
I just want to say, Dr. Gutierrez, you have a great team there with Tony, CFO, and his staff, because with all the regulations and that they have to follow with the state and at the national level as well. Obviously, they're doing a great job. So, good job, team. Keep up the good work.
It does seem as though each year it gets to be a little more challenging.
Obviously.
Right.
So, good job.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Dr. Gutierrez?
No, I just again want to echo Mr. Flores' words, and the work that Tony and his team do is certainly reflected here in this report.
No further questions? If not, do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Flores and a second from Mr. Hope for the approval of the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ending June 30th, 2018. There's no further discussion. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Ladies, thank you very much for all the time you put into this. Mr. Hilberg as well. All right, moving on to item B. It's approval of unassigned fund balance compliance requirement for the year 2017-18. Mr. Hilberg.
Okay, I'm going to try to attempt to use the pointer. I've not done this a whole lot, so pardon me if I make a mistake, but hopefully we can get through this. A lot of the information that was discussed by Mr. Ramel, you'll see those numbers reported here again. What we're doing here is we're taking a look at 2 things. Although the title says fund balance test for, as per board policy CE local, there's something else that I want to expand on just slightly. And Mr. Ramel brought it out a little bit in his report to you, so we'll get into that in just a moment. You have the CAFR in front of you, or an electronic copy was provided to you. By the way, there are hard copies available if anybody would like to read that hard copy in its 102 pages, or 103 pages, I believe. But you have that report. There are two primary reports that we want to look at for our purposes this evening. Those financial statements consist of the C1 and the C2 schedule. Those reports are found on page 13 and 14 of the full document. Obviously, you can't make much sense out of what's here right now, but we don't need all the information on these reports. I've provided this just as an opportunity for you to go back to the formal report, should you choose to do so, and you'll be able to tie that out to the other things that are depicted in the rest of this presentation. So the C1 schedule and the C2 schedule. Now the C1 schedule represents your balance sheet, but it's on the government-wide level, and we'll get into that in a moment. The C2 schedule is known as the expenditures, revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. However, we also know that as a P&L or an income statement, so think of it in those terms. The C1 and the C2. The information that I have not shaded in here is more closely tied to what we will be looking at. So taking a closer look at that area of the C1 schedule. It's just the fund balance section that I've highlighted here, and you can see fund balance on your government-wide level has multiple facets to it. And as you can also see, there are several columns here, 3 of which I've shaded out because they're not needed for this discussion. The debt service fund, the non-major governmental funds, and your total governmental funds. We're only looking at what is referred to in this column as the general fund. But it's important that you understand, and we've done this every month when we provide you with the financial statements. We take the financial statements for the general operating fund and we break it out into 3 reports for you. And the reason for that is because we, on a monthly basis, want to separate out the QZAB activity, the Qualified Zone Academy Bonds activity. We want to separate that out from your operations of the rest of your general operating fund. So we give you the combined, which is what is reported here because it's a TEA requirement. We give you QZAB on its own, and we give you the general operating fund on its own. And so now, since we have the required report, which combines them all, we need to do a few things to delineate between the QZAB and what's truly general operating fund. So you'll notice I've highlighted a few things here. Authorized for construction, that's a restricted facet of fund balance, authorized for construction. That $1,858,398 with the side reference of a D, that represents your 17-18 balance of unspent QZAB dollars. Now you'll see how that's important in a little while. You drop down and you see some assignments. Those are things that were approved by the board in June of 2018. We're carrying those forward because they apply to the 18-19 school year. So those assignments are brought forward. But you'll see the highlighted reference of unassigned fund balance, $25,905,913 with a reference of an H. And then again, the total fund balance, which Mr. Ramel alluded to in one of his slides, $29,068,061 with a reference of a G. So it's important to understand that on this financial statement, the balance sheet, you're only seeing the ending balance. In this case, I'm talking about the QZAB remaining funds. You're only seeing the ending balance, the balance at the end of June 30th, 2018. At the beginning of 2018, you actually had $7,281,222 of QZAB funds to spend. So throughout the course of 17-18, you spent that money down, and you'll recognize this number. Your QZAB activity is the difference between the two. That's what you spent. That's the amount of QZAB dollars. And we'll talk, there's a little bit of caveat to that. That's not just specifically your spending, but that's the net result of the change in fund balance on QZAP only. Okay? So now you look at the C2 schedule, which many of us would know as a P&L, or in this case, the technical term is Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balance. The C2 schedule, just like the C1 schedule, is, although it says general fund, it actually combines QZAP along with your general operating fund. So I've given you all your references here. You see that your revenues coming in of 61.2 million with a reference of an A. You see your total expenditures of 64 million, a reference of a B. Obviously, there's going to raise a concern there. It looks like you have deficit operations. Revenues were not sufficient to cover expenditures to the tune of 2.9 million, and that is reference C. We also have two additional items that are other financing sources that will come into play momentarily. A $4.4 million transfer in, a reference E, and then a transfer out of $2,850, a reference F. At the bottom of your Schedule C is your fund balance ending fund balance. That's your total fund balance. You see that same number on your C1 schedule. That's reference G. So that's how the two reports work together. You see your current year activity. It has an effect on fund balance. It carries over your balance sheet. So moving forward, I want to give a little bit further explanation of the items that we're seeing here. Reference B and C. Those are inclusive, as we discussed, of the spending that took place of your QZAP funds during the course of 17-18. Down here in reference E, that represents that 4.4 million is the bond construction fund reimbursing your general operating fund. Once we closed out, only the brick and mortar construction, the general, the guaranteed maximum price contract, that was closed out. All the reconciliations were done. There were additional contingencies available. Those funds came back to reimburse what was previously donated, if you will, or lent to the capital improvement fund, the $20 million. So this is going to buy down that $20 million. I haven't made I'll go back here real quick. I haven't made a whole lot of reference to that $2,850, that reference SF. What that represents is a transfer out to what was formerly known as your parenting center. Obviously, the parenting center, the building still exists. It used to be its own program, and it had revenues coming in, and therefore could support the depreciation associated with that building. But now, without any revenues coming in, or at least no revenues in 17-18, there was no revenue to support the expenditure associated with depreciating the building. So the general operating fund had to cover that cost by means of a transfer into the parenting center fund. The good news is you recently approved a lease agreement that will now support that cost and actually generate revenue in addition to it. The other good news is in prior years, when you had the parenting center program running, your transfers out at the end of the year into the parenting center program were pushing $100,000. So this year, we only had $2,850 transfer out to the parenting center. So moving quickly into the analysis, I want to just take the pieces that determine whether or not the district truly has a deficit operations. So the combined statement, the C2 schedule, shows expenditures well in excess of revenues. That's depicted here. But as we've mentioned, that includes your QZAP activity. If we look at QZAP alone, we actually did have $44,890 in revenue come in, and that was associated with interest income on the unspent bond proceeds. It's not significant, but it is something, and it's also dollars that can be used for QZAP purposes, so it's nice to have that additional money. But there were expenditures, bond spending of $5.4 million, almost $5.5 million. So your result of operations, that's that $5,422,824, all associated exclusively with QZAP activity. So the balance of that combined statement would obviously go to your general operating fund alone. And when you do that math, 61.1 million in revenues, less 58.6 million in expenditures, you actually increased fund balance had we not had on the general fund to bring in the activity from QZAB, you would have increased your fund balance by $2.5 million. And in fact, that is what happened. It's just on paper, it's hard to see. So we're breaking it out here for you. So when you combine all of them together, then this is what it looks like. There's your combined statement with your references to the right. You can tie those back to the C2 schedule using the references I've indicated, and then the information broken out for you by QZAB and general operating fund only. So that's your result of operations, but that doesn't tell the whole story. You have to take a look at how that impacts your fund balance, but then you have to apply it to QZAB and you have to apply it to the general operating fund. So we have to bring in the information to find out where we started with fund balance. We have to bring in the 16-17 fund balance information and break it out between QZAB and general operating fund. So I've done that at the top of this slide. 16-17 fund balance for construction. For QZAB, it started out at $7.2 million. And for the general operating fund, all the other facets that you saw earlier of fund balance, those are all attributed to the general operating fund. That started with the year of 17-18, $20,252,626. So you combine all that together, and then you take the operations, the result of operations for the year, and subtract it from, or add it to, as the case may be in the general operating fund. Then you get your net result, or your ending result to fund balance, and that's what you see here now. 17-18 fund balance, you recognize that number on the first column to the left, QZAB. It started with 7.2. You see the current year activity. You see the ending fund balance. That ties back to your C1 schedule using reference D. But when you do this analysis with the general operating fund, you can't tie back to the C1 schedule just yet. And the reason why is because there were additional items that impacted fund balance in your general operating fund. And those items were associated with what I talked about earlier, the $4.4 million transfer back in from capital improvement fund, as well as the $2,850 transfer out to your parenting center. When you do that, if you look at your middle column there, you'll notice that your total fund balance for the general operating fund alone comes to $27,207,663. When you add that with the QZAB, you get to the number that you can tie back to on your combined financial statement, your reference G, which is actually on both your C1 and your C2 schedule, $29,068,061. So that's the first layer. The other layer comes quickly, I promise. The test. We're going to take a look at the total expenditures, all inclusive of the combined statement. We recognize that reference B, $64 million. We back out the QZAB expenditures because they're non-operational expenditures, and we back out the reserve for encumbrances from the prior year, as well as the assignments that came through as board approved through the course of the year 17-18. We back all those out because they're non-operational expenses, and you get your total operating expense for 17-18 of $57,796,016. According to board policy CE local, we want to make sure that 25% of that is maintained in unassigned fund balance at all times. And I say at all times, that's not exactly true. It's only calculated officially one time throughout the year. And here's the reason. Because you're going to dip into your fund balance, unassigned or otherwise, at the beginning of the year. Right now is a perfect example. You have no revenue coming in. We don't have any tax revenue coming in, and we don't have any state revenue coming in. But we still have operations going on. Obviously, that's going to impact your fund balance on a monthly basis. But on an annual basis, we've made a budget for the entire year. We know where we're going to land. We know we're going to end up getting those tax revenues. We already know we're going to get the state dollars. We've calculated what we expect those to be, and so that we know what we anticipate the ending fund balance to be for 18-19. But for 17-18 now, this $14,449,004, that's the minimum that we would need to maintain. But as you can reference on the C1 schedule, there's actually $25,905,913. That's your reference H for exclusively unassigned fund balance. That means you have an excess, if you will. It's what that really is representing is fund balance that you can use for non-operational items, one-time items, assignments, things, special projects. You want to use that money for one-time items. You don't want to get yourself into a situation where you've got a recurring expenditure that you're using fund balance for, but you do want to use it for large one-time items, and that can be any number of things. So the bottom line is that the CE local requirement has been met for 17-18. I want to throw in one additional case just for the sake of argument, and I'll back up to this slide right here to do so. I went ahead and just for grins ran this analysis without backing out any of these non-operating expenses, not a single one, including QZAP. If you do not take out any of that $6.3 million, what happens is you have a net result of obviously the beginning number, $64,116,740 as your expense, total expense, including QZAP. If you take 25% of that, that would mean you would need to maintain $16,029,185 in unassigned fund balance. Still, when you reference that against what you have of $25.9 million, you are still to the good of $9.8 million. So I just want to clarify that in case that is a concern for anyone. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yes, sir.
It's that obviously that's good, but isn't it also not good to have too much? According to TASB, I think they said you don't want to have too much in fund balance because then they say you're not you're not utilizing the money on facilities or programs to that nature, correct?
I would say that there is certainly an argument for that, how fund balance gets built up. And Mr. Ramel, you can speak to this if you'd like to, but here's what I would recommend to any district is that if you're moving forward operations every year and you're adding fund balance, take that assignment. You took the first step this year, which was you've mandated what the minimum fund balance needs to be, and that's a good thing. But you can actually take that a step further and say, now we want to take whatever fund balance that is remaining unassigned and earmark that such that you're going to fund things that you know are coming around on the horizon. And that could be any number of things. I'm not going to try to go into elaborate what they could be, but a district could get very proficient with saying certain percentages or certain dollar amounts are going to be set aside for inevitable large expenditures that are coming down the road. And that's a prudent way to do it. And to my knowledge, TEA has never, or TASB has never had an objection to that. Now, Mr. Ramel, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, so just kind of, I guess, echoing Tony's comment, it's that unassigned number that's really
Correct.
what they're focusing on.
The unassigned.
So, as a board, now you have those new classifications of fund balance where you can assign fund balance for one-time projects. I know a lot of times, if the other option too is you may have debt service that possibly you can pay off early.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, you want to assign that so that way it's clear in your report that we have this amount, but really we have these things earmarked. But that's really the focus is the unassigned fund balance and making sure, getting to your point, that doesn't build up to the point to where maybe someone's thinking, well, we have too much there. But that's why as a board it's good to kind of think about those long-term projects.
Correct.
That you want to be able to pay out of existing fund balance and not have to necessarily issue additional bonds, maybe for construction or other types of projects that historically you've had to issue debt to acquire.
Good. Yeah, I think that's always been a topic for a number of years for this district, and obviously we're in a healthy state, and moving forward, I would hope that this board and the guidance of Dr. Gutierrez, that obviously we know there's facilities that need some addressing, so with this leadership, let's please address that moving forward.
Mr. Hilbert, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we began discussion on earmarking some of that unassigned a few months ago, and we assigned, I believe it was close to $400,000 or something like that.
Well, there's an assignment of the total right now, just a little bit over $1 million. Okay. $665,000 of that is representative of the 18-19 QZAP payment, and then an additional, I believe it's 449,000, something to that effect, of other identified one-time expenditures.
Like the trucks for maintenance and stuff like that. I believe there was like four or five items, wasn't there?
There were four, I know, yes, there were 4 or 5.
Okay, so, and that's what we were talking about, adding like 2% of that and putting it over for one-time purchases and stuff. And
That would be an option,
yes,
absolutely.
Okay.
Any further questions? If not, he's asking for approval of the unassigned fund balance compliance requirement for 2017-18.
So move.
And I'll second.
I have a motion from Mr. Holt and a second from Mr. Flores. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Hilberg. I'm sure you see numbers in your sleep. That's a lot of information, but you, once again, you did a really great job of explaining it to the board. It's very complicated.
Thank you.
All right. Is that it? Okay. Item C. Thank you. Is approval of Matador Stadium architectural design services. And I see Bill's disappeared, so.
Oh, has he?
I don't see him.
No, I mean,
oh, there he is. He's hiding
pole.
behind a pole.
You better not
Okay.
disappear because I need him. Yeah, but,
Sorry, Bill.
Again, as is normally the case, when you have an RFQ or an RFP, a request for proposal or a request for qualifications, in this case, is a request for qualifications. As the business department, we're here to make sure that the procurement methodology is followed, but as far as specifications and questions relating to services, we will defer in this case either to our Director of Maintenance and Operations, that would be Mr. James Pizzagna, and in conjunction with Mr. Bill Lewis. So if you have any questions of that nature, we would turn it over to them.
All right. Any questions? No, I think, okay. Ms. Reel?
Go ahead.
I had asked a couple of questions in an email to Dr. Gutierrez, but just for the record, can you tell me who was on the committee for this?
Myself, Mr. Pizzagna, Aaron, Mr. Amador participated, and Ms. Whitman participated, and Mark Bewley participated.
And this is also a pretty costly or pretty big expense, right, for the design services. So I don't really understand why there wasn't a dollar amount associated with it. And then,
This procurement was only for the hire for professional services. This was not a bidded project or item. We have not negotiated the services yet, which we're going to ask them to perform and them provide a price. Now, they could provide a price or a contract us, and we could say no. We still have to enter into an agreement with them for services once we provide requirements for what I asked them to do.
Yeah, and to add to that, Ms. Reel, the issue with a professional service providing a cost up front is that there's not a scope of work that's definitive at this point. And so there wouldn't be anything in the specs that would say, this is what you want built, and so then you would have an opportunity to say, this is how much it would cost to design it. That we don't have that because it is the design, and that's where the challenge comes in terms of getting a price on the front side. That comes as you negotiate what the scope of the work will be.
so once the scope of the work is decided on, then you will bid it out? You can just go through the process.
We're just doing a process of the design piece, so we would pay them for their design services, and then at some point in the future, if the board so desires to put the project out for bid, we would start that process where the project would go out to bid for once we determine funding for that. Then we would have to bid the project out formally. So just like we did with vestibules or the high school or previous construction projects.
But we're paying them for this service, right?
If there's an agreement, then of course we'll pay them for the design piece.
I just was when I was looking at I don't know if you have that anywhere.
The chart.
Yeah, the chart.
Oh, the tabulation? Yeah, it's the exhibit. So.
I just want to put it
There it is.
There you go, thank you. And I don't have anything against Pfluger. I was just noticing that Pfluger and Huckabee were, actually Huckabee scored higher in the first two, and then on the interview, Pfluger was higher. But Pfluger is also consulting, right? Didn't we hire them to consult on our facility?
On our facilities, yes.
So they probably, have a pretty good idea of what the scope of the project is, right?
We have not had any discussions about the scope of the project with anyone up to this point. So.
Okay, well, I was just wondering why, I guguess what I was thinking, why I would be curious as to what Pfluger would charge as opposed to what Huckabee would charge, because they both came in pretty close on the rankings. So if one charges more than the other, that would seem to be an important piece of a decision for me. If one company would charge
Can you
more
answer the
than
question
the other?
about costs in this part of the process?
Yeah, so, and Ms. Rilda, I certainly understand why you feel the way you do, and I think, unfortunately, the government code doesn't offer that option. The methodology is to choose based on quality, the most qualified provider of the service. You have to choose that first. Then, after that selection is made, and that requires board approval, then administration has an opportunity to try to negotiate with that approved provider of those services. However, the code also allows for, if a fair and reasonable price, and that's the way the wording is, it's just exactly that. So what is fair and what is reasonable is subject to debate. But we do have individuals, Mr. Pizzagna, Mr. Lewis, and others in our administrative team who have had experience, even recent experience, with negotiating with design services. So we know, at least on a percentage basis, what is reasonable. And that changes depending on the scale of the work, obviously. But there is a concept of what makes at least fair and reasonable negotiation on price. But that can't take place until we have approval to do those negotiations based on the recommendation that's being put in front of you this evening. So if a negotiation breaks down between the district and Pfluger, should you choose to approve, and we're not able to come to a contractual agreement that's fair and reasonable in terms of price, then the opportunity is there for the district to go to the next highest, and in that case it would be Huckabee. So there is that opportunity still there.
And I would just say one more thing is maybe make a correction on that bottom right-hand corner for the total number. Yeah, because it didn't add it. I was looking at it and I thought 315, that's pretty low, but it's just not added properly. Okay, thank you for your explanation.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm ignorant about architectural design services. What all would be a part of the services? Did they plan the staging of how to progress with the changes being made and so on? Because we know it's going to have different stages over time to get it where we want it to be. Is that a part of the architectural design, or did that come?
That would be more of, once we select an architect and they design the project, then of course, and once, with your approval, and then we go on to hiring a contractor, the architects, the school district, and the contractor will go ahead and sit down together. I hope I'm getting this right, what you're asking, and then we'll set a schedule of what needs to be done in this certain date, what needs to be done in this certain date, without interrupting any athletics that may be going on.
And that's determined by the contractor, not the
Well, actually,
architect?
it's determined by all three, by the school district, by the contractor, and the architects.
Thank you.
We all work together.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? So they're asking for approval of the Matador Stadium Architectural Design Services for RFQ number 1902, and they have recommended Pfluger Associates.
Just for the record, I'd like to make everyone aware that far right column, the total number, Ms. Whitman, you said, I believe, 712?
Okay.
Madam President.
712.
Mr. Holt.
I move that we approve the Pfluger as the architectural design service, or company to do the architectural design services for us on the Matador Stadium.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Holt, a second from Mr. Flores. Any further discussion? Not, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign, and we have this approved 7-0. All right. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item D, which is consideration and approval of the district and campus performance objectives for the 2018-19 school year. Mr. Cantu.
All right, good evening, Madam President, Dr. Gutierrez, and members of the board. So this evening, what I want to do is share with you our framework, which we're using this year to guide our district and campus improvement plans. And so we're going to go through, first of all, the process that we engaged in, and then the framework, the performance objectives, and just briefly touch on some examples of some strategies. It won't. So what you have here is the continuous improvement process, and so this ties into all the work, regardless if we're talking about the campus or the district, and it all starts with our data analysis. So in order for us to make some really good, educated decisions, we have to know what the data is telling us. And so for the purpose of the district improvement plans, we worked with subcommittees that are formed with the DEIC. And so the DEIC is that Education Improvement Council that meets monthly. This is done usually at the end of the year. So this data analysis was done at the end of last school year. We come up with some problem statements or identify some needs, which is that next step in that comprehensive needs assessment. Come up with some needs, look at the areas around demographics, student academic achievement, our processes and programs across the district, and then our perception data, right? So what are our stakeholders saying, what are they feeling, and how are we collecting that and bringing it into the picture? So when we do that in that subcommittee, we then move to identifying some problem statements and some root causes. So why is it that we're performing the way we're performing, and how are we going to improve? Which takes us to that third step, which is the improvement plan. So then we have campuses create that same process. They go through the same process with their CPOC at their campus level, and we have to make sure that we're including all kinds of stakeholders. So definitely teachers, of course, parents, community members, and district business representatives, so that we get a perspective of everyone. So while that's happening, there's data collection that continues through that process, and then they come up with the performance objectives. So once that is conducted, we usually break for the summer around that time, come back, receive some more data around STAR usually. This year, TELPA's results were also released later, so we have to look at any other results that were released late by the state, and then finalize our plans at the beginning of the school year. So the process that I outlined is this continuous improvement process that we have gone through both at the district level and at the campus level. And I'm going to share with you the new
Mr.
framework.
Ganthu, I just want to let the board know that I was able to have an opportunity to see this process in place today. With the campuses this week are undergoing their data dialogues, and they are presenting basically their state of the campus to Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Ganthu, and their respective director of elementary and or secondary. And I had the opportunity to sit in at Barnes and listen to Mr. Garza and his academic dean share where their campus is and really utilize this as a tool and model it as they spoke to the data that their staff is digging deep into. And I just want to commend the work that Mr. Ganthu and Jason are doing with the campus principals to ensure that we're looking at every student and not only that, but every standard.
Thank you, Dr. Gutierrez. So as Dr. Gutierrez shared, this is a continuous process. So it definitely happens in cycles and it happens fast and furious, but it also has to happen with purpose. And so as we develop this, here's how we began to align our work. So Dr. Gutierrez had a vision when you all hired him to be the superintendent here, right? So he came in with his 90-day action plan. He did his research, and then of course working with the community and you all and various stakeholders and task forces, we adopted in March of last year the strategic plan. So what we wanted to do was make sure that whatever plan that we have, whether it's the campus level or the district level, we need to make sure that all our arrows are pointing in the same way. So we did away with the previous framework and we created a more simplified, more streamlined and aligned framework. So the three strategic priorities that you all adopted last March are guiding all our work this current year, both at the district and the campus level. So you will see that our first goal is around teaching and learning, which was the first strategic priority. Our second goal is around how we engage stakeholders, and our third goal is really about how we create the conditions to have the best employees. So that guides all the district work as well as the campus work. So there are 3 goals, and then each of the goals has different performance objectives. The first performance objective, I'm not going to read them line for line because you have this, and I just want to touch on some highlights. So the other thing that we were able to do is we asked every campus, and this is what you're approving today, your performance objectives have to be very similar if we want to work on very strategic, very targeted work. So we've asked them to use these performance objectives that we adopted at the district and then just tweak them with the different metrics, right, or the different measures that apply to the campus. So for example, you will see that around teaching and learning, we want to be a be or better district, right? And so we had some goals there, or one of our goals, this is a SMART goal, so it's strategic, it's measurable, it's attainable, but at the same time it's aspirational because it's not going to be easy. We're asking for a lot of work, we're asking for a lot of movement in a very positive way, and it has to be very targeted and time bound. And so you'll see that we want to go from 67% in approaches to 73 and ultimately to 78. 38 in our meets, and all this is using STAR data, from 38 to 41 and then to 45%. And then for our masters from 15 to 18 to 20%. So we broke it up into a 2-year goal, but I hope you all know that we are really pushing for this to happen this year. Doing so, we asked the campuses then to follow the same line of thinking. We have adapted a calculator to identify appropriate goals based on student performance, and that is how the district or the campuses developed their goals. So every campus, as you'll see, the other campuses followed this, and then there were some required strategies. So if we're saying that we're going to meet this goal, we have to be very strategic. And so you see those 4 bullets around purposeful planning. So that's around the POC initiatives. That's really making sure that we understand our standards. If we're going to teach a standard, we have to teach it to a level of rigor that the state expects and how it's tested. And so that's what that purposeful planning is getting to. We're asking that the campuses follow instructional frameworks so that every lesson that is planned is broken out specifically, or there's a different framework for each content that makes sense in a way that it makes sense to teach science, right? Very exploratory then compared to ELA. So there's a framework that we've outlined that every single teacher should be following. Of course, I touched briefly in our PLCs. There was a big push. We continue to make it a big push. It's in the master schedules. And so we've walked to the campuses through what does it look like? What does it mean to be a PLC? How do we function as a PLC? And then we're checking the work along the way. And then finally, as required by state law, that we're accelerating instruction for those students who need it. So I went into a level of detail that I will not go into the others, but just so that you understand the thinking behind this. So it's all very similar. Performance objective number 2 is making sure that we have post-secondary ready students. And so we are closing the gaps. We've identified some areas that we have to do some work in. The campuses identified their gaps and they changed their numbers out. And then we required a couple of strategies. So rigor and relevance, there's a big push. Working with some consultants to really increase the level of rigor, really increase the relevance of our lessons, and then making sure that we're building strong relationships, which gets to that engagement strategies. Performance objective number 3 is around the whole child, right? Really getting to that social emotional learning piece, but also including the physical fitness, the lifetime fitness. And so we decided that we were going to measure attendance as a way to ensure that students are engaged, that they want to come to school, and that we're increasing that level of attendance. So you can see we want to increase it from 92.8 to 94%.
And as you've seen in updates, the campuses are really taking this to heart and doing an amazing job with attendance. Today, multiple campuses reporting 100% at various grade levels, and we're doing a pretty good job of maintaining 95% or higher with attendance. Although our goal this year is to get to an average of 94, so we just have to keep up with that momentum. Our principals, our teachers are working very hard to make sure that students are at school every day, because if they're not at school, they're not learning.
Right. And so part of this is setting aspirational goals, but also attainable goals, right? We also don't want people to get discouraged and say, there's no way that we're going to increase 3%. You know, ideally, we'd want 100%, but we know it's not going to be there. So as you look at some of the metrics and you have questions, please ask, because there was a method of how we got there. And then also decreasing out-of-school placement, so out-of-school suspensions. We want to decrease it by at least 10%. That same idea that if students are not in class, they're not learning, and especially if we're suspending them outside of the class. So we're really working with all the different stakeholders to ensure that we cut that. And so as you can see, some of the required action steps are those incentives that Dr. Gutierrez mentioned. It's really working, and it's lighting a fire to really engage students and reignite this love of learning.
And you mentioned the out-of-school suspension. Are you including the alternative school in that out-of-school, or is that still considered somewhat in school?
Right. So in the way we're defining out-of-school suspension is completely. So we sent the student home.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then, of course, dropout prevention strategies to make sure that we're not losing any students, and if we lose them, that we pick them right back up. So our next performance objective is in response to intervention. So we really want to focus on making sure that every single student is being served with the interventions at different tiers. So we know that every single student learns in different ways, and we have to respond to them in different ways. So this is what this is about. So really looking at our tier 3 students, which are most at-risk students, and decreasing the number of tier 3 students. We used early data, or from the foundational grades, because we believe that if we target for this purpose our foundational grades and we close the gaps early, we will see some great gains later on. And so that's why we targeted that. And at the secondary, we're looking at failures. We don't want any of our students to fail. And if they fail, there must be a very valid reason. So we're saying that we want to see a reduction of 5% in failure rates in secondary campuses each grading period. So then you can see the required strategies there. So goal number 2, so remember we have 3 goals. That was goal 1 with several performance objectives underneath. Goal 2 is really how we engage stakeholders. And so we're going to do that by increasing parental and family engagement. One of them is to making sure that we have meaningful dialogue with them. So we want to see an increase of 15%. And so what that looks like, somebody asked, so what is the measure? What are you measuring? How do you measure all the meetings? We can't, right? It'd be ideal to get all the different departments to measure the meetings. We're not there yet. We will get there at one point. But right now what we're using is really around how at central office are we reaching out with partners, and that's what we're going to use as a measure. So really this is about the campus is doing the same thing when we have family nights such as science night, literacy night, math night, that they increase that, and it's probably a 15% increase, just depending on the campus, is about two events, roughly 2 events. One of the required strategies is that we really go and invest through training in our parents. So every single campus was represented at a training that happened at Region 13 on September 25th as a launching pad so that we can redefine our parent engagement policy and our parent compacts that are required through Title I. So everyone got trained. We're now going to visit with them, and when we roll out the district policy, we have some ideas, right, so that we can always be fresh in our initiatives and our ideas.
So let me ask you a question really quick about those parent and family engagement nights. You said you want each campus to have 2, or an additional 2?
15% comes out to about 2 additional
2
activities.
additional to what they were already doing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. The second performance objective under Goal 2 is really around our public relations and communications. And so making sure that we're really using our social media to gather feedback. We know we have a big social media presence, but are we capitalizing on that so that it becomes a little bit more two-way? Not that it's meant to be that way, but how can we engage that way when it's appropriate? And so what we really want to do is just collect some survey data through social media, because it is a buzz and it does help. Performance objective number 3 is also expanding partnerships. This is mainly with our businesses, so that we cover every single sector of our stakeholders. And so again, we're aiming for about 15% based on how we're already partnering with businesses. So at the campus level, it may look like I have 1 business representative. Let's increase that to 2 or more. At the district, based on how we visit with partners, how are we expanding those visits, how are we expanding new partnerships, and so really measuring that. And so finally we go to our 3rd goal, and this is around having the best employees. So how do we recruit them and how do we retain them? And so what we want to see is a decrease in teacher turnover. We know that it's really expensive, we know it's not good for students, and it's not good for campus culture and climate. So we want to decrease teacher turnover by 50, or it has to be less than 15%, is what we're aiming for, and the same thing for administrator turnover. So some of the required strategies at the campus and the district level is how do we promote employee recognition. So the Superintendent's Award is one example, really moving towards highlighting a teacher of the month at the campus, a teacher of the week and whatnot, so that we recognize strong performance and we begin to live and thrive in this environment where we have celebrations and we promote the good. And I think that is it. Yep, that is it. So just to wrap up, and then of course I will entertain your questions. As you look through the plans, you'll notice that it's very streamlined, that is done very purposefully. I do believe in principal autonomy, I do believe in campus autonomy, but I also believe in aligning our work, and that's what this is about.
First of all, let me say, Mr. Cantu, this presentation is a lot more simplistic and easier to follow than the multiple presentations we've seen over the past years. I think even the employees at the campus level could actually follow this very easily. And I applaud you and your staff for creating this in this manner. The last ones that we have seen in the past have just, I mean, they're like a a blur when you look at them. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, where do you go with this? Also, one thing that I did come up with a question on it, you know, we're asking the 15% improvement on goal 2, what was it, priority or performance objective, goal 2, performance objective 1, the increase of 15%. Have we considered allotting any additional budget? I know that we had discussed with Dr. Gutierrez about adding some budget to the campuses for this type of engagement. Maybe the board could look at possibly earmarking, following along with what we were just discussing with the budget, earmarking some of the additional fund balance to increase this budget at the campus level or even at the district level as well to make this a little bit easier on the campus principals so that they'll have the funds. And I know there was a lot of discussion about that in your evaluation as well, Dr. Gutierrez, but I think that should be something that the board should consider. But again, back to the report, much easier to follow, much easier to stay in touch with as a board member, as well as probably as an employee.
Good. Thank you.
And the general public as well, because it's out there. Yeah. So John, I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. So perhaps we could put more money into some of these parental and family engagement.
Well, like what Mr. Hilberg was talking about earlier, earmarking some of our excess, if we have excess funds at the end of the year, to go back and earmark some of it towards let's call it goal 2 PO1 category for, let's say we take what? Tony, throw a number out there, man. Just what do you think would be? I mean, we got 14 campuses. Let's say we give them an extra, $2,000 a piece. That's $28,000. Okay, I don't know. Maybe we make it a number. Maybe we make it a percentage, depending on what we're wanting to do. But and it may be based on student population for each campus. I don't know how you want to do it, and that's what
Can you
the accountant
speak
is.
to our discussion
Sure.
regarding that?
So the first part to that is legally we're required to set aside some parental engagement money because at our Title I campuses. We also can't supplant, so we have to make sure that whatever money we put aside at our Title I campuses to engage parents, we also have to do it at our non-Title I campuses. Now, going above and beyond is what you're saying, right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That is something that we can definitely look into, especially as we begin to come up with the ideas and really push and we measure this. I think it's only fair that if we're going to hold people accountable, that we support them.
And we need to give them the resources. I mean, we can't say, okay, here, we want you to have 2 more events, but hey, you got the same budget you had last year.
Right.
It's just impossible to achieve that. At least to achieve it with quality.
Correct.
And that's what we're looking for. Not only is quantity, but we also want quality with our engagement with our parents and our community and our industries.
Well, I agree with all of that. I'd say let the superintendent figure it out what he needs to do to accomplish what you want.
That's what I'm asking. I'm saying we as a board need to get that approved. I'm not saying that we're going to determine the amount. I said they need to present us with an amount and we need to approve that we have set aside some of that balance. I have no idea what a campus would use cost-wise to put on a family event. It may be a movie night, it may be a carnival. I mean, it doesn't matter what they want to do. They need to know a money amount. They're going to approach Kim and go forward and so on.
I think we all understand where we're going forward. Any other discussion? Ms. Reel?
I just have if you could give me an example, like you want to reduce the suspensions from campuses. So
yes,
how would you help the teachers?
And is that more of an expulsion than a suspension? Is it you're not using the word synonymously?
Right. No, they're different. So the suspension could be like 3 days suspension, going home for whatever violation of the student code of conduct. I just can't think of an example right now. So the strategies that what are we doing, right? And so I think part of it is working with Ms. Lagore's team, really thinking about restorative practices, really looking at other options. So instead of sending somebody home, what is the alternative, right? So I know our assistant principals are mainly the people who handle the discipline. They've currently engaged in a restorative discipline book study. And so right now that is one of the ways that we can begin to think about how do we reduce it, and at the same time, how do we support teachers so that
because we know discipline is always difficult, right? If it were easy, then we wouldn't have any discipline problems. So that's one way. Ms. Labor, would you like to add anything that maybe I may be missing?
We do have a behavior support staff in the special ed department, and he is very helpful, especially with the young students, and plans to work their behavior to where they're not getting suspended. And then working with the behavior coordinators on all the campuses, we look at their numbers and also what kind of supports that they could be utilizing at their campuses. And everybody's very excited and motivated to move forward with the restorative practices and really start jumping into that training. And they're really excited about it. It's actually moving a lot faster than I anticipated. So I think we're going to definitely be dealing with that second semester to increase that.
In addition to that, you have RTI as well, the response to intervention that addresses behaviors, and working with our principals and our teachers to help them build stronger relationships with students. But in addition to that, we're doing the rigor relevance framework at the secondary, which its intent is to increase the rigor, but also keep kids more engaged in meaningful, innovative lessons, which will also result in a decrease in misbehaviors.
Mr. Flores?
Yes, ma'am. I also agree with Mr. Holt in regards to curriculum programs that have come through the district. I like the streamline that the rigor that's challenging but achievable, as you mentioned, Mr. Cantu. Goal one, objective one. I'm going to ask this, but I'm assuming the answer is yes. But from the central office, are you going to send assistance to campuses? Because obviously not all campuses are going to be, some campuses are going to be stronger than others. So what is central office's game plan of helping one district that's going to need more assistance, because some of those objectives to go from 3 or 4% in 1 year is obviously going to be a little bit more difficult for one campus. Which is good. I like that.
To the tiered levels of support that's happening as far as the check-ins with campus at leadership teams?
Right, so I'm going to speak from what we've done and then kind of our vision moving forward. It has been my experience working with campuses that have been historically low performing, that we cannot raise expectations and we cannot raise ultimately student achievement and scores without the support. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So one of the ways that we do that is through what we call the campus check-in. So we've identified the campuses that were very close to becoming improvement required. So Rodriguez was a couple points away. AJB was 1 point away. The high school was a few points away. We also looked at other measures, right? So turnover at the staff, turnover at the principal level, and that's how we began to identify which campuses we prioritize through those check-ins. So that is a weekly meeting with the principal and their admin team. Other campuses, then we meet bi-monthly, and some campuses we meet monthly. Now that doesn't mean that those campuses that are not receiving the weekly check-in aren't receiving other supports. That's just this layer of support. And so through the campus check-in, we meet weekly to create the agenda, and that looks like anything from, at the beginning, do we have the systems in place that we need to in order to start school off well, right? So what does your master schedule look like? What does RTI look like? What does planning look like? What do lesson plans look like? The basics, right? So just like any successful company, there are standards of operations, right? Like there's a protocol that we follow, and that's what we want to do. As we begin to create these systems, we want to make sure at the very beginning that everybody has something that's very standardized. From there, the conversations evolve. So sometimes it's around data. A lot of times it's around data, like Dr. Gutierrez was talking about. This week, they're focusing on the first CBA, so the first curriculum-based assessment. So students have been in school for about 9 weeks. We just had our first assessment. We're looking at the data. And what I'm telling principals, we just met with 4 today, is we will look at the data from central office. So I really don't want to focus on the numbers. I want to focus on the trends, right? I want to focus on student by student expectation, right? Teak by teak. What is it that we're seeing? And then more importantly, what are we going to do differently? And so that is part of the check-in, that frequent conversation. We also talk about teacher performance, right? We get down to where are the teachers that we know we can grow, and we provide more support through our coordinators. Who are the teachers that we know right now are maybe causing some concern, and how do we support them additionally? So that's one layer. Of course, Mr. Schmidt and his team with our directors and our coordinators, they are out on campuses as well. They're providing direct support to teachers. They're providing support to our academic deans, our instructional coaches. So there's definitely several layers of support. Tomorrow we're meeting as a department to really think about, are we focused? Are we staying true to our plan? Do we have to shift our plan? Because I believe if we're truly going to follow the model of continuous improvement, that we're always collecting data, right? We're always looking at the needs, and this happens. So tomorrow is our own internal checkpoint as a department to this. Good. So please rest assured that yes, some campuses are getting more support than others, and if they are getting more support than others, there's a purpose.
Excellent. Good to hear.
And at the same time, what's happening is we are building the capacity of our principals and equipping them with the tools to be able to lead instructionally effectively. And so there's a high level there's also a high level of monitoring with the compliance piece, which has been a concern as of late too. And so that's also taking place during that time with the campus leadership.
I just want to say we're very fortunate to have you, and I thank Dr. Gutierrez for bringing you on. I think you're really making a big difference in the district, and as Mr. Flores was saying, it's great that we actually have people from central office going out to the campuses pretty much on a daily basis. That's something we hadn't really seen in the past, and I do believe firmly that the administrators and the teachers are noticing, and that they're starting to really dig into this improvement plan as well. So thank you.
I appreciate that support. And ultimately, one of the most important things that I like to share is we know that people are working hard. That is not a question. What we want to ensure is that we see results of the hard work. And sometimes it's tough to see it immediately, and so we celebrate what we know is happening well, and then we continue to push and to monitor and to support for things that are not going as well. So with that, if there aren't any questions, I would excuse myself.
So he's asking for consideration and approval of the district and campus performance objectives for the 2018-19 school year.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Now hear a second from Mr. Jenkins. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. All right, moving on to consideration of the submission of a class waiver to the Texas Education Agency. Ms. Whitman, that's probably why Ms. Moreno's been sitting here all night.
That is right. She's a trooper. I just texted her. I said, thank you for staying. We are asking for a class size waiver. We do need approval on this particular waiver. We have, this is a requirement for kinder through 4th grade to be at a ratio of 22:1 and not any higher than that. If we are higher, we have to ask for a waiver. We have 35 classrooms across the district that are in this requirement. We have one classroom at Kinnicky Elementary that has 23, 23, 23, 14, and the 14 is the bilingual class. We've talked with Ms. Moreno on where she is with that staffing. We do have a large kinder group as well, but because of the dual language program starting there, we've left a teacher at that kinder level to keep those numbers a little bit lower. We could move one up to second and not have to do the waiver, but in speaking with Ms. Moreno right now, it's working. Our second grade team is okay. They've got some things in place to provide that extra support. We will never ever exceed the 23. That's just a standard. And if we lose any between now and the end of the school year, that goes down to 22. That will be capped at that level. So it could be by December we might be at 23, 22, 14. And that 22 will never change. Those kids that are in that class are not LEP students, so they do not belong into the bilingual program right now. So also, we know that kinder is exploding right now across the district, and Kinnicky is also exploding with the housing. So we don't want to move any more teachers around from particular grade levels there. So that also cushioned us a little bit with the kinder enrollment to have that teacher with that grade level. So this will be submitted tomorrow if approved. I have to provide the board meeting dates to TEA. And again, it's out of the 35 classrooms, it's second grade at Kinnicky Elementary, and parents will receive a letter in English and in Spanish that just by law we have to let them know that we've applied for a waiver.
Madam President. I move that we accept the submission, or accept the recommendation to submit to class size waiver for the Kinnicky second grade class to the Texas Education Agency.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holt. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Flores, any discussion? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Get that letter out. Thank you, Ms. Moreno, for sticking around.
Yes, thank you. Go to bed.
All right, moving on to item F, which is personnel action for professional employees. So Ms. Whitman, you're still on the hot seat.
Yes, ma'am. We have 5 elections that we're bringing forward to you for approval. We have Justice Brown in special ed behavior for Barnes Middle School, bachelor's degree, 0 years experience. Lisa Castro is coming to us for 3rd grade at Pot Lawn, master's degree, 3 years experience. We have Ms. Mercado coming to us at Pot Lawn, 5th grade bilingual. We did not have to put a waiver there. We got lucky. She relocated from McAllen, certified bilingual teacher, master's degree, 15 years. So we really were fortunate with that hire. Elizabeth Plake, she is actually a Seguin grad, and she is a 2011 Seguin grad and has an amazing background in science and has been in the research and development industry. So she is now looking to come back to her alma mater to teach. I think she's going to teach chemistry or IPC. And we have Nicholas Vargas teaching Spanish at Seguin High School, bachelor's degree, brand new. So out of the 5, 3 bachelors, 2 masters. And then the listed resignations as you see. And I think I try to keep you posted on the updates when we receive those. So if there's any questions at this time.
Do I hear a motion to approve the recommendations from Ms. Whitman?
Madam President.
Yes, sir.
I move that we accept the election of Justice Brown, Lisa Castro, Evilla Mercado, Elizabeth Blake, Nicholas Vargas, and accept the resignation as noted in the report.
All right, thank you. Do I hear a second? Mr. Amador, any further discussion for Ms. Whitman? Questions? All right. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. And moving on to item G, which is the Seguin High School building plaque. And we've been over this a number of times. We've been given a couple of different drafts. And again, this is for the high school plaque. I don't know, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Hoffman, you want to talk to us any more about this?
Good evening, Board President and Dr. Gutierrez and trustees. For those who remember the workshop we had earlier this month, there were 2 requests that you wanted to see, 2 drafts for the plaque, one with actually one of the draft, or both drafts having some of the items moved around a little bit. And on the 2 drafts that you have, we included those movements. You wanted to see a draft, which is draft 1, that included Bill Lewis's name, Dr. Guerroro's name, and Stetson Roan's name. So that draft is your exhibit, draft 1. Exhibit draft 2, you also wanted to see, in which the interim superintendents were not included and Mr. Roan's name was removed. So you see that in draft 2. I do have a handout I can provide to you. This is essentially draft 1 that was provided to us by a company that creates plaques. Unfortunately, they weren't able to give me a draft 2, but this will kind of give you an idea of the look that we might be looking for. You will notice in this handout that Seguin ISD is up in the corner. I know y'all had talked about moving that down to the bottom, but I think when you look at this, you'll see it probably looks pretty good up in the corner. Otherwise, we have a blank spot. Exactly.
And we still have a sponsor to pay for the plaque, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This is draft 1. They didn't come up with a copy for draft 2, but it would look very similar to this.
Essentially, draft 2 would not contain Bill Lewis's name, Dr. Gordo's name, or Stetson's Roan name on the list of past officials down at the bottom.
Madam President.
Ms. Reel?
I move that we accept draft 2.
Ms. Reel has made the recommendation that we accept draft number 2. Do I hear a second? Have a second from Mr. Jenkins. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your...
I have discussion.
Oh, yes, sir.
Just for the record, in our workshop, I had requested that we have a third draft. I had requested that we had the board, the existing board that was on the groundbreaking ceremony, which had the interim superintendent of Dr. Godoldo on there, and that board, so it wasn't on there. So I just wanted that for the record.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further questions? This is for draft 2. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. And, okay, so the motion carries 4-3. And at that point, we're going to move on to board comments and requests. And I do, again, want to say thank you so much to Mr. Flores for your 20 years of service, Ms. Effenberger for your 6 years, and Ms. Reel for your 2 years. We are going to miss you up here. I don't know if you believe that, but we really are going to miss you up here. And we look forward to seeing you out in the audience in the future. All right. Any requests for, yes, sir?
I have a couple of items I'd like to bring forth. I haven't seen any new vehicles in the maintenance department. I know we approved that a few months back. I haven't seen any come across. I'd just like to update maybe in our just send out in our update what's going on with those trucks, because I know that one of them is not even starting. I was right beside it and wouldn't start. So I think that's hard to keep our facilities maintained if we don't have functioning vehicles to get them there. Second, it was brought to my attention at a recent meeting with regards to once again that one of the buildings on site is truly an original building. I'm not sure who the facilities committee contacted to determine if any of the buildings were original, but I was made aware that there are 2 people in the area that are still alive that were around about that time, from my understanding, that know about it. Miss Buckman and Miss Stotzenberger, I believe her name was. Miss Stotzenberger. Okay. And that we might just reach out to them just to verify, just before we, do any. And like I say, I don't know what information y'all got, but it was just brought to me by one of by a community member that we might just try to check in on that just to be sure. And like I say, I told them I only knew what I was presented, so I wanted just to bring that question up to the board.
Yes, sir, Mr. Jenkins.
At the last board meeting, at the end of the meeting, I asked for
for a report on what the Jumbotron had made for as money and what our efforts were to get the advertisement at CNO report.
I wanted to hear them.
Oh, you want to hear it verbally? Okay. So can we hear that verbally next month?
Yes.
Anything else, Ms. Effenberger?
I would like to say that I am very much in favor of Mr. Molina's proposal for Seguin, but I cannot see that all of that property is needed for a national park. I think it's important to preserve the Hispanic culture and historic efforts, but I hope that the board will have some pros and cons of the financial impact before any decisions are made. I know it's been reported in the paper that the property is for sale, and so it's being made public, and I really think that Mr. Molina has a good proposal as far as involving the community and getting that made into a national park. But they don't need all of that property. A national park can preserve the history in a very small building, and it's much more easily maintained. So I do have a question. I have only recently become aware that the mini-mats program is not being implemented across the street with the rental of that property. I didn't know that was happening this year. And I was wondering, are the student parents being given any kind of instruction or services? When that mini-mats program was going, they had classes on parenting skills and all for our students. Is that happening at the high school elsewhere now?
Okay, we'll get a report on that, and we'll get back to you personally on that as well.
Well, I'll read about it.
Okay, all right. All right.
You don't want
All right, anything else? It's been a long evening. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? I have a motion from Mr. Amador, second? Second from Ms. Reel. It is 10:04. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.